Story 1. Told my fiancé I never wanted kids from day one. Then his sister had a baby and he started calling me mama and changed his phone wallpaper to me holding the baby. So I left. I've 26F, always known I didn't want kids. From a young age, even when adults asked me how many kids I wanted, my answer was always none. I didn't even know what child-free meant. But I always was. As I got older, I realized what it was. I just didn't feel that unconditional love that's supposed to come with having children. Could I love a child? What if I can't be a mother because I don't know what that kind of love feels like? That's how I've spent my whole life. Then I met my fiancé, 34M, 2 years ago. He was my first everything and I finally experienced romantic love. But when it came to kids, I still knew I couldn't do it from the beginning. I told him that having kids was off the table. He said he was fine with that because he never really liked kids, so it wasn't a problem for him. 5 months ago, he proposed and I said yes. We moved in together and everything was perfect. We were planning our wedding slowly. No rush. That was until his sister had a baby 2 months ago. My fiancé instantly fell in love with his nephew and was there every step of the way. He bathed him, changed him, napped with him. It seemed normal, I guess, so I didn't mind. 3 weeks ago, we went to his sister's house for lunch. My fiancée was mowing her lawn when she asked me to watch the baby for a couple of minutes. I tried to refuse, but she looked so down that I agreed. I thought she would just put him in his stroller or something, but she plopped him into my arms and went upstairs. Panicked. I had never held such a small baby before, and I was terrified I might drop him. 5 minutes in, he started crying. At first, it was fine. But then he started screaming at the top of his lungs. How can such a tiny baby be so loud? I was almost in tears myself. I stood up as gently as I could and went outside where my fiancé was. I yelled at him to come grab the baby for me. He came over, took a picture of me holding the baby, and instead of taking him from me, he started giving me tips on how to calm him down. He pushed the baby closer to my chest and said, "He really suits you." I was on the verge of a panic attack, my hands trembling. I was even more scared to drop him. I yelled, "If you don't grab him, I'm putting him on the floor." He got angry, called me a beach and grabbed the baby. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I took an Uber home. He came home around midnight, showered, and went to sleep on the couch. The next morning, he was already gone when I woke up and he didn't come home until 3 a.m. I told him we needed to talk, but he just said, "Tomorrow," and went back to the couch. The next day, when I came home from work, he was waiting for me. We sat down and he apologized for how he reacted, saying he didn't know what got into him. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Me, do you want to have kids now? Him, I don't know. I just love him so much, you know? Me, well, that's normal, isn't it? Him, I guess. But do you really feel that against having kids? You don't even have to get pregnant or give birth. We can adopt. I talked about how scary pregnancy and childbirth were for me, especially because of how hard it was for my mom. She almost died giving birth to me due to complications, and she had to have an emergency hysterectomy. Me, that's not the only reason. And you know that. You know how I feel about not knowing if I could love a kid unconditionally. Him, I know. But you learn to love me, right? You can love a child, too. Listen, we don't have to agree on this now. We can get married first and then revisit it. Please don't shut it down immediately. Then he started to cry and hugged me, so I dropped it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't be a mom. I know myself, and honestly, I felt betrayed by him. I thought I'd eventually start resenting him, but I hoped we could get past this. Then he started doing some strange things. He changed his wallpaper to the picture of me holding the baby. He started calling me mama. He wanted to start having unprotected sex. And he even began touching my belly when he thought I was asleep. I have fertility issues that I've never treated because what was the point? My period is irregular but mostly pain-free, so I never bothered to do anything about it. But when he suggested I go to the doctor to see what's going on with it, I panicked. It felt like he was trying to get me pregnant, and abortion is still illegal in the country we're living in. So I left. I told him my mom fell in the shower and broke her leg, a lie, and I wanted to stay with her for a couple of days to make sure she was okay. He said that was fine, and I waited for him to go to work. Then I grabbed important documents, some clothes, sentimental things, my dog, and I left. I don't know if what I did was right. I'm starting to doubt myself. Maybe he just wanted me to be healthy. Maybe he was just cuddling me or liked that picture. But I can't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He hasn't realized that I left and never coming back. He just questioned why I took the dog. Jokingly. I didn't tell anyone. I just told my mom I missed her. Maybe I should go back and pretend everything's okay. But something about him feels off now and I just don't know anymore. I'm sorry if this is all over the place and extremely long. I just can't talk to anyone about this and it is eating me alive. I probably left some things out of context, so sorry about that too. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. I think you are right to leave. You are clearly on different pages about children. Railroading you into motherhood is reckless and deceitful and not the foundations you want to build a marriage on. However, I do think you need to own your decision to leave and tell your fiancé that it is over instead of running away. OP, you're probably right, but I always run away. I can't handle confrontation. I ran away instead of moving out like a normal person when I was 18. Does the fiancé know where OP has left to? P. Gladly, he was never in my home country. He has a super demanding job, so he doesn't even take vacations, so it's nearly impossible for him to find me. Even if he tries, I'm not even in the capital or near there. Comment 2. We can get married first and then revisit it. He plans to make it harder for you to escape. Tell him your firm stance on no children. My stepmom didn't love me unconditionally and it effed me up. Even if you would be a good mother, it's so that he forced you to keep holding the baby. His sister, too. P. I can't blame the sister. She's a single mom and is doing everything on her own. Her birth had some complication and she really is doing the best she can. Update 1. February 11th, 2025. So, I'm going to try to make this as chronologically accurate and concise as possible. If something is unclear, I'll clarify in the comments. The first thing I did after my last post was get a blood pregnancy test. It was negative. That night, I also spoke to my mom. I wasn't comfortable sharing every single detail, so I left some things out, but she told me she supports me and that I can stay with her for as long as I need. I also talked to my sisters. They admitted they never liked the idea of me dating someone so much older, but they didn't want to push me because they know me. If they did, I'd probably get angry, distance myself, and become even more dependent on him. I apologized for overreacting at everything and assured them that they should never hesitate to tell me if something feels weird or wrong. I called my boss and gave him a more family-friendly version of the story. He was absolutely livid, not only with him, but also with me for not telling him sooner. He's like my work dad and was the one who requested I join him. He said he didn't bring me to a foreign country without intending to take care of me. He promised to pull some strings to get me a position at the office in my country since my former position was already filled. He also told me that if I wanted to get my things back, I could go back on a Saturday and he would accompany me. After thinking about it, I decided to go back. It might seem silly, but I had spent a lot of money on K-pop photo cards, albums, mangas, and I didn't want to start my collection from scratch. So, I spent a couple of days with friends and visiting family. Realizing how lonely and isolated I felt in a foreign country, even though it's not that far from home, I knew I could never leave my family like that again. Even my dog seemed happier, spending every afternoon cuddling with my mom. I also visited my father's grave. I've always hated cemeteries and avoided them, but I needed him in that moment. I went alone, brought fresh flowers, cleaned a little, and just sat there talking to him. I told him none of this would have happened if he hadn't passed away. I cried like a lot, then laughed like a crazy person. I ended up staying for about 3 hours, but it felt so healing. I also went to my mom's gynecologist, and she said it was possible to get a tubal ligation, especially considering my health issues. She warned me it could take about 6 months, but I was okay with the wait. So we started the process. I felt so free after that appointment and just so much happier being home. I didn't even think about my ex until he messaged me asking about my mom. I told him she was doing better and that I'd be back on Saturday. I decided to talk to him face to face since I was already going back to collect my things. On Friday afternoon, my sister lent me her car and I drove back. It's almost a 12-hour drive, but with breaks, it took about 14 hours. I went straight to my boss's house, and when I arrived around 9 a.m., he asked me to have breakfast with him and his family. Afterward, he and his son came with me to my ex's house to help pack up my things. I even got some of my favorite plants. They made fun of my taste in music, and we finished in about an hour and a half. Afterward, I went to my ex's sister's house. I needed to know if the whole baby incident had been a setup. I knew she didn't work on Saturdays, so I went to her house. Luckily, she was home and invited me in. We sat in awkward silence for a moment until I asked her, "Me, did your brother ask you to make me hold the baby?" Her, "What? No. Why? What even happened that day? When I went downstairs, you weren't there and he said you got sick and had to leave." Me, "What did he tell you exactly?" Her, "He said you had a panic attack because of fertility issues and holding the baby was triggering." I told him that didn't sound like you, but he said, "How are you supposed to know more about my fiancé than I do?" Then he left. Me, "What the actual EFF?" Her, "Yeah. He even said, you wanted to babysit and go to the park as a couple with the baby. But I told him he was crazy if he thought I'd let him use my baby like that. He got mad at me and didn't speak to me for a couple of days. Then I laughed and explained what actually happened. She was furious, so mad she started crying. She apologized for leaving me with the baby, and I apologized for saying I was going to put the baby on the floor, clarifying that I wasn't actually going to do that. She said she was genuinely considering going low contact with him because his behavior was creepy and she feared he might do something to the baby. I decided to tell her I was leaving her brother, and she said she understood. We hugged and she said she'd miss me. I went back to my boss's house to wait for my ex to get home. I told him to text me when he got off work. I was a nervous wreck. I almost threw up. My boss's wife made me chamomile tea and stayed by my side, rubbing my back. I honestly love that woman. The whole family, really. My boss and his son came with me to his apartment. One thing about my boss, he's a softie, but he's huge. He's 195 centimeters, 6 feet 3 inches, and about 130 kilograms, 286 pounds. And his son is basically a carbon copy of him, so I felt pretty safe. When my ex got home, he smiled at me, but then saw my boss and his son. He asked me what was going on. Me, "I'm breaking up with you. You're clearly going through a baby fever phase and I don't want any part of that." Him, "What do you mean breaking up? We can't break up. We love each other." Me, "No. You love the idea of me being pregnant with your child and that's not going to happen." He tried to hug me, but my boss grabbed his shoulder and said, "Why don't you sit here with me?" Him, "I can't lose you. I love you. You're my soulmate. I can't live without you. If you leave me, I'll die. I would rather never have kids than lose you. I'll even get a vasectomy. But please stay. What will our families think? You can't just break off the engagement like this." Me, "First of all, this isn't a telenovela, so calm down. Second, I never even told my family we were engaged, and I've already told them we broke up." Him, "What about the dog? You can't just take her." Me, "What dog?" "The dog I've had since I was 17. That's my dog, and she barely tolerates you. Trust me, she's much happier with my mom." He started sobbing and tried to speak, but I couldn't understand him. My boss's son couldn't choose a worse moment to laugh and asked, "You really didn't tell your family?" Me, "I just never found the right moment, you know." My ex calmed down a little and said he'd never let me go. He still loved me, blah blah blah. I felt a little threatened when he said something like, "I'll find you and make you fall in love with me again." I told him, "Good luck with that, but seriously, we're not in a telenovela. Enough with the drama." I gave him the ring back and he threw it at me, though it didn't hit me. I said, "I hope you find someone who wants kids, but I also hope you get psychological help." And we left. I spent the night at my boss's house, and the next morning I went back home. I spent the rest of Sunday sleeping because I had a bit of a fever. That's me, the girl who gets emotional fevers. I helped my mom with her business today and my therapy session is on the 13th. Due to how things went in the office, I'll start again in March. They kind of fired me to rehire me. Thank you so much for helping me see how crazy this whole situation was. I feel so happy and so light now. I forgot how much I love having my family around. I probably won't update again unless something crazy happens. But yeah, thank you people, especially women of Reddit. Edit to clarify a couple of things. Some people said and even messaged me to tell me I never loved my fiancé and I'm a horrible cold person. I did love him and I think I still do. I had a whole script memorized to talk to him about his sister's baby, him wanting unprotected sex, why I ran away, but I panicked and forgot everything and decided to just be blunt and direct. I didn't take two men to make fun of him while I broke up with him. That's actually insane. They came with me because I didn't feel safe with my ex alone. People saying I need therapy. I know I already made the appointment. It's on the 13th. About the tubal ligation. It's nothing confirmed yet, but I'll try to get a bilateral salpingectomy. Someone here actually let me know what that was. I wanted a hysterectomy, but that's basically impossible according to my doctor. Some people told me this sounds fake. I wish but no, it's real. Maybe it's the way I worded or because English is not my first language. But there's that. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Parents sided with my cheating ex and refused to let me in their house after divorce. 5 years later, they found out I'm engaged, and suddenly, they want to be back in my life. For some backstory before I talk about what is happening right now. 5 years back, I got divorced from my ex-husband, and that is when my parents cut ties with me. My ex, Nick, cheated on me with his office receptionist, and I found out about it while going through his phone. I had my suspicions for a really long time, and one day, I finally decided to confirm it and go through his messages and stuff. That's when I realized that our marriage was over. It was very difficult for me because Nick and I had been together for almost a decade before we got married. We had been childhood sweethearts because his parents and my parents were family friends. That's how we had met and started dating. We had had an on and off relationship after we graduated from high school. But at 22, our parents started pressuring us to get married, so we did. But things didn't really work out for us after we got married, and we would fight pretty frequently. Even then, the thought of cheating never crossed my mind, but he went ahead and did it. I was extremely hurt when I found out about his affair, so I decided to move out of our house that day itself. Obviously, my first instinct was to head over to my parents' place, but I guess Nick had spoken to them by then because he must have guessed that I was going to head over there, and he was pretty desperate to stop me from leaving. So he had asked my parents not to let me in, and they actually didn't. I still remember standing outside their door, begging them to let me in so I could stay with them for a couple of days until I could arrange a place for myself. But they just told me that they were not going to entertain this because, no matter what had happened, Nick was still my husband, and we could make it work. I even told them that Nick cheated on me, but they didn't seem to find anything wrong with it and told me that they were aware of the fact that Nick had been cheating because he himself had confessed to it when he had called them up. But apparently, according to my parents, a marriage cannot be broken by just one person, so indirectly, they were blaming me for everything, and I wasn't even surprised since that's exactly what their attitude had been towards me ever since I got married. I don't even know why I expected them to be helpful back then. Even before I had found out that Nick had been cheating on me, I had shared my marital problems with my parents several times and told them that I did not think staying with him was a good idea anymore. But they had always told me that I was way too ambitious and I did not give enough time to my marriage, which is why it was not working out. And even on that day, when I tried to get them to let me stay with them, they made it seem like I was the one at fault because I was never dedicated to my marriage like I was to my work. So when they started implying that I was equally at fault, I had had enough and I decided to leave right that instant. I have a few good friends, and even though I was not ready to share the news of my divorce at the time, I decided to visit a friend of mine and tell her everything that I was going through. She was kind enough to let me stay with her for a couple of weeks. In those few weeks, I spoke to a lawyer, filed for a divorce, and started looking for an apartment where I could stay. Back then, the only people who were there for me emotionally and supported me throughout were my friends. My parents had absolutely nothing to do with me, and the only time they would even try to contact me was when they wanted to tell me how big of a mistake I was making by leaving my cheating husband. Nick kept trying to get in touch with me. He kept saying that we could still make it work and that all we needed was some marriage counseling so we could put this all behind us, and he kept apologizing as if it would fix anything. My parents, unsurprisingly, were on his side and kept telling me to forgive him. I blocked them all out of my life, and soon enough they stopped trying to get in touch with me as well. Eventually, by the time the divorce was finalized, I was not in touch with any of these people. Since then, I haven't been in touch with my parents, and I don't regret it either. We do get to see each other occasionally when we attend events hosted by other members of the family, but we ignore each other. I know they don't regret what they did to me either, so I'm fine with this. Now, fast forward to 5 years later, and I'm currently engaged to my boyfriend, Charlie. He and I have been together for the past 3 years, and they have been some of the most wonderful years of my life. We met at a restaurant, his restaurant to be more specific. He approached me while I was out with my friends, and it was not until much later that I found out that he was the owner of the restaurant. We went out on a couple of dates, and soon enough we got pretty serious about each other. Within a couple of weeks, I found out that not only did he own that restaurant, he came from a similar business background too. His father is the owner of one of the biggest bakery chains in the state, and that's why he grew up to be quite interested in everything related to the kitchen as well, which is how he ended up with his own restaurant. I was quite impressed by that, but honestly, it didn't matter to me much since I'm a working woman, and I plan on working even after marriage. I've never been after his money, but I can't say the same for my parents because as soon as they found out that I was with this guy, they did not waste any time in reaching out to me, trying to get back into my life. This happened last week, a few days after I announced my engagement on social media. I'm guessing that some relative decided to take it upon themselves to tell my parents that I was engaged once again, and they must have done their own research and found out about Charlie and the family that he belongs to. Literally within 3 days of my announcement, they reached out to me via email and said that they had found out that I was engaged, and they wanted to congratulate me. They also wanted to apologize for their past behavior and said that they regretted not getting in touch with me in these past couple of years, but they wanted to make it up to me by being there for me for my wedding. They did not mention anything about Charlie or the kind of family he came from in that email. At least he was smart enough to do that, but I'm not stupid enough to fall for that. The fact that they were reaching out to me only after my engagement, even though apparently they had felt bad about it throughout and had wanted to reach out to me earlier, was suspicious enough. So I decided not to reply to them, and if they really wanted to be a part of my life again, they would reach out to me again. And they did reach out to me again, and in the second email they kind of exposed themselves. They told me that they had read a lot about Charlie and his family, and they were very impressed by the kind of guy that I had decided to go for. I don't know why, but it just sounded like I was with Charlie for a purpose, which was really not the case, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. But it was about to get worse because in that email itself, they had said that it was because of Charlie and his family that they had decided to reach out to me because they were so proud of me because now I was going to be part of such a prestigious lineage. It all just reeked of pretentiousness, and I was also quite offended by the fact that even though I had plenty of achievements of my own, they were most interested in the fact that I had been able to make my way into a rich family through marriage. I don't know why they even sent that email. I don't think they understand that this was only going to make the situation worse for them. Anyway, after that email I just blocked them, and everything was quiet for a couple of days until last evening. I moved into Charlie's apartment about a year ago, and I've been living here since. I haven't invited a lot of family over to this place. Only a couple of my close friends and cousins know where I live, so there was no way that they would have told my parents, but even then, somehow my parents managed to find out, and when I asked them, they didn't tell me how. Anyway, they showed up at our house last evening, and both Charlie and I were pretty surprised when we saw them standing outside. He knows the entire history with my parents about my divorce and how they reacted to it, and it's safe to say that he does not approve of it. He was the one who had opened the door, and as soon as he saw my parents, he called me to speak to them. Thankfully, though, he did not leave my side, and while I was speaking to my parents, he was holding my hand the entire time because he knew that this was going to be extremely difficult for me. Anyway, my parents started off by apologizing to me and told me that they did not want to make it seem like they were more interested in Charlie and his family than they were in my forgiveness, and they were being honest about the fact that they had wanted to reach out to me several times over the past couple of years, but they had always failed because they knew that I would be upset with them for how they had behaved in the past. I told them that that was not a valid reason to not have reached out to me, and in fact, their reaction to my divorce had been really insensitive, and even if they had reached out to me, I wouldn't have forgiven them then. Neither do I plan on forgiving them right now because 5 whole years have passed since my divorce and I don't need them anymore. I was very stern with them, and I told them that I wanted them to leave without much of a fuss. I didn't know how they had found out my address, but if they showed up again, then I would be forced to call the cops. After that, I was about to turn around and shut the door, but I don't know what got into my dad. He just started yelling at me and told me that I was being way too egoistic and cocky, and I couldn't just treat them like this because now I was getting married into a rich family. That really upset me because it was completely uncalled for and also completely untrue. I was not acting like that because I was married into his family, and I am pretty sure that anyone in their right mind would not have said that. So I gave it right back to him, and I told him that this was not about me marrying into a rich family. This was about them and their behavior. They had had 5 years to fix themselves, but in spite of that, they were still the same horrible people, and I wanted nothing to do with them. I knew for a fact that I was doing the right thing by cutting them out of my life permanently, and I had no intention of forgiving them at any point. After I said that, instead of speaking to me, they started addressing Charlie and told him that he needed to watch out for my attitude problem because that was what had ended my last marriage. They went out of their way to mention that Nick had cheated on me with the office receptionist whom he had known for a couple of months, and now they were happily married with a child while I was still just at the engagement stage, and according to them, they believed that I could never get ahead and have a happy family with anyone because I was always just focused on showing everyone how I was superior to everyone. Apparently, I had done that in the past by focusing too much on my work instead of my marriage, and now I was walking down that path once again by acting superior just because Charlie was rich. So in their opinion, my superiority complex is what had cost me my first marriage, and it was going to cost me my second as well, and they warned Charlie about me. But thankfully, my fiancé was having none of it. He just told my parents that he was not willing to take relationship advice from people like them, and if I wanted to brag about his wealth, I was free to do so because it was a fact. He was rich and I was indeed getting married to him. He also told them that whether I had an attitude problem or not, it was for him to deal with, and they did not need to worry about him because we were certainly not worried about them. And the final thing that he said, it actually even made my jaw drop because he told them that he was glad that my ex had found love with a woman he had an affair with her, and he was very glad that in spite of having 5 years to reflect upon how they had behaved with me, they were still being supportive of Nick instead of me. But it didn't matter now because all of them combined were still nowhere near our net worth. And then he shut the door while my parents continued to freak out at us outside. After a while, they left us alone, and I honestly didn't think that this would go any further. But then this morning, I received a phone call from my paternal grandparents, and they started lecturing me about how badly my fiancé and I had behaved with my parents. It was a bit of a shock because my grandparents have mostly been on good terms with me. Even though they have been in touch with my parents for the past 5 years, they have always maintained a neutral stance on this entire situation. But now, all of a sudden, they believe that I should apologize to my parents, especially because of what Charlie said to them about our net worth. They said that my parents might have messed up once in the past, but apart from that, they had always tried to be good to me. I'm not sure how true that is because my relationship with my parents has always been a bit strained and difficult right from my childhood. But it is true that they have always provided for me and have done their best to give me a comfortable life, which I cannot deny. And that's what my grandparents doubled down on. That I need to be grateful to them for that, and now I cannot just brag about how much money I have because, truth be told, it's not even my money. It's my in-laws who are rich. I'm still in the same tax bracket as they are, and I have no right to be gloating like this. I tried to tell them that it was Charlie who had responded to them as I was not even interested in speaking to them, but they said that it didn't matter who had said it. What mattered was that I had let it go even though it was really humiliating for my parents. They told me that the least I could have done was stand up for them even if I did not want to forgive them at the moment. I tried to explain to them that there were a lot of other factors too, and they also said a lot of stuff about me, but my grandparents said that none of it mattered. They only cared about my behavior, and they would speak to my parents separately about whatever they did not think was right about their behavior. I was getting a bit agitated after a while because I felt like we were talking in circles, and they were just not ready to understand my point of view. But then they told me that a man who could not respect my family would never be able to respect me, and then they just hung up. And of course, I love Charlie. I don't think he's done anything wrong, but for my grandparents' reaction, I'm seriously doubting what I have done. For allowing my rich fiancé to insult my estranged parents on the basis of their mediocre financial condition. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for all the support and the comments. It means a lot to me and Charlie. We have decided that we do not owe my family anything, not even an apology. They were the ones who were harping on about how I was becoming too cocky and arrogant just because I was marrying into a rich family, so Charlie and I just decided to act the same way that they were accusing us of. After speaking to a couple of friends about it and reading the comments here, I don't think I've done anything wrong, and neither has my fiancé, so I don't need to feel guilty about anything. I've discussed this with him as well, and he's made it very clear that he's not apologizing to anybody who has disrespected me not just once but every chance they get. Even the last interaction that we had when they showed up had been very disrespectful in itself, because even when I had told them that I did not want to talk to them and I did not plan on forgiving them, they refused to leave and made me look like the bad guy just because I did not want to entertain their nonsense. Charlie told me that he had known that my parents were not good people because of what I had told him earlier, but after meeting them and speaking to them, he knew that they were awful, and he would not advise me to forgive them or speak to them at any point. And I agree. When I told him about what my grandparents had said, he brought up a pretty valid point. He told me that so far they had stayed out of the drama because it was convenient for them, but just as soon as it was my parents who got hurt, they did not think twice before getting involved. As long as I was the one hurting, they were fine with it, but as soon as their darling son got offended, they came after me, and that was something that I should think about before I took their words seriously. And I thought about it. He definitely makes a good point. In the past 5 years, every time I would try to talk to my grandparents about my relationship with my parents, they would tell me that I had to sort it out myself and that they did not want to get involved. So eventually, I stopped trying to vent to them because I knew that they would not entertain it. But now, I guess it was just a way for them to stay on good terms with all of us and be diplomatic. I guess they don't plan on being diplomatic anymore though, because it's very obvious that their priority is my father, not me. It was just foolish of me to expect them to be any different. Anyway, I'm glad that I have Charlie by my side because so far, it honestly seems like he is more angry about all of this than I am, and it's pretty cute very honestly, since it goes to show just how much he cares for me. Update 2. Hi. So it's been a week since my grandparents contacted me to tell me that what I did with my parents was not right, and that I need to apologize to them. In the past week, I did not respond to them, so they took it upon themselves to try and reach out to me again. I had blocked my parents and my grandparents, so my grandparents decided to make a new email account and sent me an email saying that they were very disappointed in the way that I had decided to choose to deal with this situation. They said that they had realized that I had blocked them, and it was very surprising because in the past 5 years, they had always tried their best to be on my side. But now they had realized that their decision to be diplomatic had been a bad one, and they should have just told me to my face that my parents were right about everything and I did have an attitude problem that I needed to deal with. And there it was. They couldn't come up with a real reason to hate on me, so they just started piggybacking on whatever my parents had been saying about me. Of course, they had to get personal for no reason, even though until today they had always maintained that both my parents and I had different opinions on everything, and so they couldn't say who was right and who was wrong. I found that email extremely annoying, and when I showed it to Charlie, he just told me that he was glad we hadn't apologized or reached out to anybody among these people because clearly, they did not deserve it. They were all just selfish, and if anybody had an attitude problem, it was my family. Anyway, I did not reply to that email, and I do not plan on doing so either because I really don't think it's worth my energy to argue with them or explain to them why I'm right. The truth is, they will never think that I'm right because they just want to paint me to be the bad guy, and they will keep finding excuses to do so. They're just mad that I'm getting married to Charlie, that I'm going to be rich now, and they are not going to be a part of my life, so they won't be able to benefit from my marriage. It's so weird because Charlie and I think that if they really wanted us to forgive them, they should have just been extra nice to us and tried to flatter our egos instead of acting like this. Their bitterness and resentment are just making things worse for themselves, and they don't even realize it. Or maybe they do, they just don't care about it. Either way, it doesn't matter because they are not going to be a part of my life at any cost. Update 3. So it's been 2 months since my last update, and after that, I pretty much forgot about whatever had been going on with my parents and my grandparents because it was not a matter of concern for me. They did not try to reach out to me after that, and I got busy with planning my wedding and a lot of other work as well. Then 3 days ago, my parents showed back up at my house again. This time Charlie was not at home, and I did not even open the door when I realized that it was them standing outside. I just told them that I did not want to waste my time arguing with them once again, and I just wanted them to leave, and if they did not go away, I would not hesitate in calling the police, and then things would become really ugly for them. In spite of my warnings, my parents did not go away, and my dad just started telling me that he did not want me to accept them back into my life again or whatever. He just wanted to tell me that he and my mother were really sorry about the way they had behaved the last time that they were here. After giving it a lot of thought, they had realized that they had just made the situation worse for themselves by refusing to accept the fact that I was not ready to forgive them right now, and now they wanted me to know that they were going to keep being sorry for how they had failed me repeatedly and keep apologizing until I forgave them. My mother even went on to tell me that they were ready to wait however long it took, even if it meant waiting their entire lives just for my forgiveness. That was a pretty heavy thing to say, and at that point, I felt obliged to open the door and explain to them that I did not know what to say to them. I didn't even know how to feel about the situation, but all I knew was that I was not ready to deal with them right now. I explained to them as politely and civil as I could that they did not need to constantly show up to tell me that they were sorry. I just wanted some space away from them, and maybe in a couple of years, if I wanted to, I would reach out to them, but for now, I just wanted them to leave me alone. Truth be told, I don't know for sure if I will be reaching out to them eventually, but just for the sake of it, I said that to them, and they seemed to feel better about the situation when I said that, and my mother told me that she would be looking forward to hearing from me. Even if it didn't happen in a couple of years, she hoped that one day I would be able to forgive them. She started crying and told me that she and my father had always been very egoistic and too arrogant and proud to admit that they hadn't always been the best parents to me, especially around the time of my divorce. They said that they had been manipulated and brainwashed into believing that I was the one who had attitude problems, and since then, they have always just been very confused about me. Sometimes they feel like I'm not wrong, at other times they think that Nick was right about me, which is why their attitude towards me has always been so baffling. Personally, I don't think that it's a valid reason because I'm their daughter, for God's sake. They should know how I am as a person, but then as a child and even a teenager, they didn't really give me enough time, so it's not surprising that they don't know. Anyway, that is actually their fault and not mine, but I did not want to create a whole thing out of it, so I just told them that whatever had happened in the past was already done. We could not change it. However, now the least that they could do if they really wanted me to forgive them was stay away from me and give me some time and space to heal. They did not say anything after that. They just quietly left. After Charlie came back home, I told him about how I had chosen to deal with the situation and whatever my parents and I had talked about when they visited. He told me that the situation could have turned out worse, but he was glad that it didn't. Anyway, I don't know how to feel about that now, so I'm just trying not to think about my parents. I'm focusing all my energy into planning my wedding, and I hope it goes well. Update 4. Hey! So I got married last week, and it was a total blast. Nobody from my immediate family attended, of course, since they were not invited. I did invite my maternal grandparents, but unfortunately, since they live out of state and my grandpa has a lot of health issues, they could not attend. So there were very few people from my family at the wedding, but even then, I did not mind because I knew that I had Charlie by my side, and his family has pretty much made me a part of their family, so I'm really grateful for that. My parents reached out to me a couple of days after the wedding from a burner phone to tell me that they had heard from my cousins that I was married now. And even though I did not want them at the wedding, they wanted to let me know that they were very happy for me and hoped that I would find happiness in my new life. Now I didn't say much. I just thanked them and let that go. A lot of you guys must be of the opinion that I shouldn't even have responded to them, nor should I have entertained them the last time that they visited me, and I should have just called the cops, but honestly, that would have led to more bitterness and hatred, and that would have inevitably led to more drama. So I think this is much better. I'm not close with them, and I don't think I will ever be, but at least we are not at each other's throats constantly. We are keeping things neutral, and I think that's what is best for us. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My ex-wife left me and our kids for a high-paying job and divorced me. A month later, she found herself in a horrible situation and begged me to come back. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, 42F, and I, 44M, moved away for her new job. She had been offered an upper management position in a company that she had applied to without my knowledge. The reason she had done so was because she knew that I would never agree to move away. We had been together for 12 years, married for 10, and we have 8-year-old twins together. Both our families are situated here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, it's been very difficult for our family because my dad's health hasn't been great, and we are always afraid of when we might lose him. Naturally, as his only son, I want to be here for him and also for my mother, and so I hadn't wanted to move away after my dad's diagnosis. I thought that Emma would understand what I was going through, but instead, she told me that I was being a little too sensitive and that I can't just keep turning down opportunities to work out of state and expect her to do the same just because my dad was sick. Before my dad fell sick, we had actually been planning to move away because she wanted a change of pace. But after my father's diagnosis, I told her that it would not be possible for me anymore. She tried to be understanding of it in the beginning, but gradually, since last year or so, she had started to become very restless, and we had been fighting quite frequently over this. She wanted to move away because she felt stuck here, and I couldn't possibly think about moving away while my dad was in such a condition, especially since it would also mean having to leave my mother to deal with it all on her own. Even if I had had any siblings, I wouldn't have been able to leave because my conscience wouldn't have let me, and I kept trying to explain that to Emma, but she refused to see my point. I just felt like she was being selfish, whereas she felt like I was the one being selfish. Then, earlier this year, she just came home from work one day and told me that she had applied for a high-paying position in a company outside of the state, and she got the job. That came as a shock to me, and I wanted to be happy for her. But I just couldn't because she hadn't told me anything about this application or this job. I was kind of in shock, so I just congratulated her. And then I said nothing. That day, I remember we got into an argument because she didn't think I was happy enough for her, even though it was a pretty big deal because I have to admit it was a good job with decent pay. However, I was just upset that she hadn't even thought that she needed to talk to me about it before applying, and she told me that she didn't even think that she would get the job. But now that she had it, she was thinking of moving away and she wanted me to come along with her. She wanted to relocate our entire family, knowing what my feelings on this were. So we ended up fighting over that, and it was one of our worst fights. It got so bad that she ended up leaving to go stay with her parents for a couple of days, and we had no contact for those days. I actually thought that she was going to file for a divorce and put an end to this. But then she came back home, and we ended up deciding that we were going to try and patch things up between us because we still had the kids and we couldn't let them down. Back then, I thought that I could still make it work with her because I didn't want to let go of this marriage. I was sure that I loved her, and she told me that she did too, which is why she wanted to make it work. But she also didn't want to give up on her dreams. And so, after a lot of discussion, we decided that she was going to take up the job and I would stay back here. She told me that she was going to try and travel back and forth as often as she could so we could make this work. We had no other option but to choose a long marriage for now since neither of us was ready to give up on each other. It was hard for me to agree, but I had to do it at least for a while before we could figure out what we wanted to do in the future. So then she left and she would come back home every alternate weekend, but even then, she would only get to spend 2 days with us and take a flight back on Sunday evening since she would have to be back for work every Monday. It was tiring for her, and I knew it, but there was nothing that I could do since she had agreed to this arrangement. With time, I guess she started resenting me, and her attitude towards me got worse. We had promised each other that we were going to try and make this work, but every time that I would try to call her during the week, she would always be really mean to me, and we would inevitably end up arguing about something or other. After a certain point of time, it started feeling like she didn't even want to speak to me, and instead of calling her on my own, I started waiting for her to call me first. Then we started speaking less to each other, and even when we would talk, it was always very cold and weird, and I didn't know what to make of it. Then, eventually, after having spent almost 4 months away, she came home one weekend and had divorce papers with her. At the time, things were really tense between us, and she told me that she couldn't do this anymore. When she came back home that weekend, we hadn't spoken for almost 6 days in a row because of the argument that we had the last time that we spoke. I wanted to come up with a reason not to get a divorce, but I couldn't come up with anything because the last fight that we had was one where she had actually thrown out the idea of separating and ending this marriage for good. I should have seen that coming because for months, not only had we been fighting, but she had also been getting closer to a certain friend of hers from high school. This friend, let's call her Melissa, was not a good person and was an even worse influence. Emma had always been good friends with Melissa, and that woman had even been there as a bridesmaid at our wedding, but I had never liked her because she had always given off a weird vibe. From what I knew about her, she was a total gold digger and always went after rich, married men so she wouldn't have to commit to them but would still get the benefits of being with a rich guy. She would even brag about it, as if what she was doing wasn't detestable enough. When I used to bring up her behavior with Emma, she used to tell me that it was her personal choice and that we shouldn't judge her. That was quite infuriating, so eventually, I just stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore that friendship altogether. It got easier eventually because after Melissa moved away and Emma got caught up with work and kids, they kind of drifted apart anyway. I had known that Melissa had also been living in the same state with her son for a couple of years since she had moved away after her second divorce, probably to scout for new prey. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in the same state, she reached out to Melissa, and she was the one who introduced her to the city and helped her move in and stuff. Along with me, I was there all along, and I had hoped that maybe Melissa would have sobered up after so many years, but she was still the same weird person. I was not comfortable with Emma being so close with Melissa once again, but she was the only friend that Emma had there, so I couldn't even say anything about it. In the months that Emma had been staying there, she had told me that Melissa had been really supportive of her since she was on her own and had even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This so-called group that Melissa had introduced Emma to was very dicey because, as far as I remember, it was 3 or 4 women who were all single mothers. They had met through Facebook and had a Facebook support group kind of thing together. From whatever Emma had told me, these women had all been with men and had kids with them, but due to a variety of reasons their partners had abandoned them, and now they were raising their kids on their own, and the only support they got was a child support check. However, it was not as sad as it sounds because most of the women that Melissa was friends with were just like her. They had gone for super rich men, had affairs with them, got pregnant, and then when these men had decided to stay with their wives and families, these women managed to get them to pay a big, fat child support check from them which supported their lifestyle. It actually wasn't just a support for them. It was also payment for them to keep their mouths shut since I'm assuming these men didn't want word of their affairs getting to their wives. It was very common for all of them to have some online business that nobody was really interested in, but they were self-employed and wanted people to believe that they were doing it all on their own. But in reality, they were running a scam and proudly called themselves independent women who had all the freedom in the world to live by their own rules while living off of the money of men who had been stupid enough to fall into their traps. Emma thought it was funny, but I thought it was disgusting, and I didn't think that it was a good idea for her to be socializing with them. However, she kept defending her friends and told me that she had gotten to know them personally and they were all really nice women. Given how we were already fighting about so many things, I didn't want to fight about that as well, so I didn't say anything. But then, in the last fight that we had before she filed for a divorce, she told me that she really admired Melissa's strength because even without any help from any man, she was raising her 2 kids brilliantly on her own. I ended up scoffing at that, and I told her that anybody who makes as much money from getting pregnant after an affair with rich guys would also probably be taking good care of the kids since that was not their child but a meal ticket for them. And that was what led to a huge blow-up fight between us because before that we had been trying our best to keep a lid on our tempers, but the frustration had just been building up for months, and that day that little disagreement over one thing was enough to set us both off. We started cursing at each other, telling each other exactly how much we hated the situation, and just kept blaming each other. After one point, she just said that if we were just going to fight like this all the time, it was probably better for us to go our separate ways, and then disconnected the call. I thought she didn't mean that, and I thought that she was going to call me and apologize, but that never happened, and I was really upset with her as well, so I didn't bother to reach out either. That week she showed up with the divorce papers, and I decided to go ahead with it because I couldn't find a reason to stay with her anymore either. We had tried our best to make it work, but it didn't, unfortunately. Even the kids, the ones we were supposedly staying together for, hardly got to see us together, and even when we were together, we were not happy. So rather than letting them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to get a divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple since we don't have a waiting period here in our state, and we only had to divide our joint assets, which was simple enough. I got to keep the house and the kids since she didn't want to take them away with her right now and said that at the moment, we could stick to our arrangement of her coming back here every weekend to meet them. We had been splitting the cost of raising them anyway, so we continued to do that. Once they were a little older, we would leave it up to them what they wanted to do. It was not convenient for either of us, but we didn't want to fight for custody since we believed that our kids deserved both of us in their lives. As for the house, we had a verbal agreement that we would put it up for sale in a few years, and whenever it sold, we would split the money. Anyway, the divorce was finalized about a month ago, And I didn't think that she would speak to me after that because even while we were getting divorced, we hardly had anything to talk about outside of the meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything had been finalized, I was trying to cope with the situation since even though it actually felt like nothing had really changed, since we were still going to stick to the same routine, life was definitely going to be pretty different for me now because I was no longer married to Emma. My kids were also very confused about what was going on. So I had to explain to them that their mother and I were no longer together, even though nothing exactly had changed. But last night, she decided to call me up again so we could sort things out between us and give our relationship another chance. Because apparently, she had made a huge mistake and she wanted to reverse the divorce. I could tell that she had been crying, and she was pretty much hysterical on the phone call. She started ranting about how she had unintentionally glamorized the lifestyle that Melissa and her friends had been leading, and because of that group, she had decided to file for a divorce. She hadn't mentioned it to me earlier because she knew how I felt about Melissa, but after that last fight that we had, she had spoken to her group of friends, and they had told her to go for a divorce. She had been skeptical about it initially, but they talked her into it, so she spoke to a lawyer that put her in touch with. But 1 month has passed since then, and she has tried literally to get herself to move on, like dating apps and blind dates and even going out every other night, but has only ended up hooking up with random people, and that has only made her feel pathetic because at least with me, even when we were fighting, she knew that she loved me and I loved her. Now she's just really lonely, and more than anything else, she also misses the kids. Her friends told her that this would pass, but she hasn't been able to get rid of the loneliness and the guilt after the divorce. On top of that, her company had been doing pretty well when she joined, but she has had several pay cuts since then because apparently they had kind of embellished how well they were doing to get her on board, and her income now doesn't match what she had been offered initially. It's not just her. Everyone in the company has been going through the same thing, and they keep telling people that things will work out if they keep working hard. But she thinks it's just so that they can retain their employees, and that's another part of the reason why she wants to come back to me. She said that she really wanted me to consider it and reverse the decision to get divorced because she just misses her family and what her life used to be. But after she was done talking and explaining her situation to me, I just felt furious with her because I couldn't believe that she had allowed her stupid and immoral friends to talk her into getting a divorce. I had always warned her against Melissa, and I had also made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after she moved away, but she never paid any mind to me, and now they had turned out to be the reason that she ended up making the decision that she did. Had it been her own mistake, I might have even been all sympathetic towards her, but the fact that she had chosen to listen to people that I hated really got on my nerves. The audacity to call me up and start crying about all of these things as if it had all been very easy for me just made me very upset, and I ended up snapping at her. And now she had to lie in it because I was not going to help her out here. In spite of everything, I had tried my very best to make this marriage work, and I'm not talking about the last few months. I'm talking about ever since my dad fell sick. I had been fighting for our marriage relentlessly, and for a while so had she, but she had been immensely selfish for the past couple of years, and that's how we had ended up here, divorced. The least she could have done while she had been staying away was at least try to understand my feelings and situation, but she allowed herself to get carried away by friends whom she knew I did not like. I told her that she was not a high school kid anymore and that a juvenile excuse like her friends had influenced her to make bad decisions was not going to work with me. She wasn't coming back home drunk to her parents. This was a very different situation, and it had affected my life and even the kids. And now, just because it's inconvenient for her, she wants to reverse the divorce. Firstly, of course, that's not how it works, and secondly, even if it did, I wouldn't do it. I was really upset by everything she had told me right before that, and I just couldn't hold back, so I told her that now if she was feeling really lonely and guilty, then she should just ask her friends for help because I'm sure if they were the ones who had encouraged her to file for a divorce, they cared about her enough to take her in if she was not doing well financially and support her emotionally as well. I was also very annoyed by the fact that she had basically just confessed that she had been hooking up with random people for the past month after our divorce. Technically, she was single, so she was allowed to do whatever she wanted, but it made me feel really uncomfortable and depressed because I felt like it had cheapened whatever we had shared for the past 12 years. So I told her that I did not want her back in my life anymore, especially after the things she had just told me, and that I was going to make sure that the kids stayed with me because I was not sure if she was a good influence on them anymore. She started crying even harder and told me that she was ready to do anything it took to make things right, but I told her that she had made a decision and she had to live with it, and the kids and I did not need her anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my ex-in-laws, and they were telling me that I shouldn't have said the things that I did because she was already really low, and it was not nice of me to kick her when she was down. They said that it was not necessary because she was already regretting everything that she had done and seemed to try and punish her more by telling her that the kids and I did not need her. I wouldn't have cared about what my ex-in-laws say, but they have been very kind to me after the divorce, so I don't know if I'm the asshole for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back and that the kids and I don't need her anymore. Update 1. Hello guys. Thank you so much for all the support that you guys have shown for me in the comments. I don't know how to say it, but it really means a lot to me knowing that so many people are on my side here. And it means even more to me that so many of you have identified with my story and have reached out to let me know that things are going to be all right. It's very kind of you guys, and I know that things are going to get better. It has been 4 days since I posted, and I had blocked Emma after we had that conversation, so she hasn't been able to get in touch with me. But this weekend, she is supposed to come over to see the kids and spend some time with them, so I don't know what's going to happen then. For the past couple of months, ever since the divorce was initiated, she would just pick up the kids from my place and go to her parents' place to spend the weekend with them and occasionally spend some time here with all 4 of us for some family bonding. But mostly she would try to stay away from me, and I was fine with it because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, though, it's anybody's guess. I'm actually kind of dreading having to see her because her parents have been very upset with me and have told me that the things that I said to her were so harsh that she has ended up crying every single time that they have called her after that. I haven't been responding to any of their messages because I don't really know what to say to them, but I feel kind of bad because I know Emma is kind of a really non-emotional person, and I know that I really managed to hit her where it hurts because she's been crying so much. Even though she hasn't exactly been kind to me and our circumstances haven't been the best, I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life, and I feel like she ruined it all for herself. I did my best to make it work, but it's not like I can make the marriage work on my own without any help from her. I don't know what to say anymore, to be honest. Update 2. So Emma came over yesterday to pick up the kids, and we ended up having a discussion about everything that had been said. It was clear from her appearance that she had been having a very hard time, and I could see it on her face, and I found it really hard to be cold to her. So then she asked me if I would be willing to talk to her just for a bit, and I ended up agreeing. Once the kids were in their room, we got to talking, and she told me that she was really sorry about everything, and she wasn't referring to the recent months, she was referring to the past couple of years because it had taken a lot for her to realize how selfish she had ultimately been, and she even said that she did not deserve me. She told me that in the past few weeks after the divorce, every time she would go out on a date or hook up with any guy, all she could think was how she wasn't sure if this was the kind of life that she wanted for herself and felt guilty for throwing it all away. She had built it up all in her head, but it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and when she realized that, it was too late for her to do anything about it because she had already lost me. While talking, she started crying again, and I tried to comfort her, but she told me that it would only make her feel worse because that just made her realize the kind of person I was and how badly she had treated me. It was kind of bittersweet hearing her say these things about me because I would have really appreciated that when we were together, but now I don't know what to say about it. Anyway, after a while, she told me that she had decided to quit her job and move back here so she could be closer to her family. She also wanted to spend more time with the kids because she had already been losing out on so much time with them. It didn't seem worth it to stay outside for such little money and sacrifice so much. The only request she had for me was that she wanted me not to file for full custody like I had said I would, and I told her not to worry about it. I had said it in the heat of the moment, but I didn't have any intention of actually doing it because both she and I had always maintained that our kids shouldn't have to suffer, and I knew that they missed their mom, so spending some more time with her would definitely do the kids more good, and I would be supportive of that as well. After we were done talking, she apologized to me for everything once again and told me that I was a good man. She also promised me that she was going to try and be a better mother and a better person, and thanked me for even letting her speak to me after everything that happened instead of just shutting the door in her face. That got me a little emotional, but I didn't say anything, and then she left with the kids. So that was it. And I didn't actually expect things to turn out to be like this since I thought that she was going to come over and fight with me. But this was nice and unexpected. She has apologized, and I'm not going to say that I forgive her and everything is in the past, but at least we are on the right track now. I don't think I can go back to her again. That's very unrealistic after everything that has happened, But the least we can do is try to co-parent our kids to the best of our abilities and make it as peaceful for them as possible. And of course, it will be better for us as well. Now let's see what the future holds. Update 3. Hey guys. Okay. So 4 months have passed since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma stayed true to her word, and within a few weeks, she quit her job and moved back here. Since then, our kids had been splitting their time between the two of us. They spent half the week at my place and the other half at their mother's, and it's been pretty convenient for them till now. Emma had been with her parents for a couple of weeks initially, but then she was able to find an apartment a few blocks away, and the kids are having a lot of fun because they have 2 homes now. As for my ex-in-laws, we are back on normal terms. Of course, we don't speak to each other on a regular basis, but they have apologized to me for bothering me back when Emma was having her breakdown, and they told me that it was not my fault, but as her parents, they were just really stressed out, and they ended up blaming it on me because it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. Emma and I are also back on decent terms. I wouldn't say good terms because it's not like we are friends, but we are cordial with each other and have kept things civil. I'm also slowly but surely moving on and trying to process everything that has happened, and it's going well so far, and I'm hoping that it continues to get better after this as well. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Dad canceled my 18th birthday for my brother, but Grandpa rescued me, revealed Mom's affair, and changed his will. Now Dad wants to reconnect. But is it just for the money? 2 weeks ago, I was about to have my 18th birthday at home, but unfortunately, my horrible younger brother decided that he wanted a weekend away without me, and the party ended up getting canceled. My brother, 15M, is my dad's favorite. If that was not clear enough, and whatever he says in this household, that's what goes. At least there was some balance as long as my mother was alive, but she passed away from lung cancer a couple of years back. Since then, life has been terrible for me because my dad only seems to care about my brother, and he thinks that since I'm older, I can deal with everything on my own. Even on my birthday, I had been planning to go out for the evening with my friends, and obviously my dad was going to fund all of our plans. But just a day before my birthday, my brother threw a tantrum and told my dad that he wanted to go away for the weekend because he had been rejected from the football team, and he desperately needed something to take his mind off of it. If you ask me, it was not surprising that he hadn't been picked for the team because not only is he incredibly bratty and annoying, but he's also not a good player and he has no team spirit. That's obvious, so it shouldn't have been surprising to him that he didn't get picked, but he still had a whole meltdown about it, and my dad had to agree. I was shocked because all of that was happening right in front of my eyes, and I decided to stand up for myself. I told my dad that I was not going to stay home while they went away for the weekend, not on my birthday of all days, because usually that's what happens whenever my brother decides that he needs some time away from everything. He and my dad go away together for some time off, and I get stuck at home. Both of them really enjoy fishing, so they go away on fishing trips, and my dad has a friend who has a cabin in the woods, so it's pretty easy for them to just take off. I'm not really a fan of adventure, and I'm definitely not a fan of the woods because I find them creepy, so I'm not like my brother and my dad at all. In the first few instances that this happened, I volunteered to stay home. After that, though, every time that they needed to go away, they wouldn't even ask me if I had any plans of my own, and I would get stuck dealing with their absence. This has been a thing ever since my mom passed away. They never used to do this while she was still around. I don't exactly have an issue with staying at home alone, but the problem is that I'm not allowed to have anyone over because my dad thinks that if I have a party and stuff, then I'm going to end up trashing the house, and he's pretty strict about that kind of thing. One time I had made the mistake of inviting a couple of friends over, and we had been very careful to keep the house clean, but my dad decided to go through the security footage and he found out. I received the lecture of a lifetime the next day, and he told me that he did not want me inviting my friends over when the house was empty because he did not trust us since we were all young teen boys, and that never leads to any good news. So neither could I have friends over, nor could I leave the house and go out on my own because my dad thinks that that's unsafe, and so I get stuck at home when they're not around. So obviously I did not want that happening on the day of my birthday because then it would mean that I couldn't have my friends over, and neither could I go out with them. It was my 18th birthday, for the love of God. It was an important day for me, and I wanted to go my way just for once, but my brother couldn't even let me have that. My dad even offered to take me along with them and hire someone to take care of the house for the weekend, but my brother insisted that he wanted to go without me since I had never been to the cabin, and I didn't even know anything, so it would be another task to introduce me to everything, and he was sure that I wouldn't even enjoy it. Besides, if I was there, he would not be able to take his mind off of what was going on in school since everyone would be wishing me on my birthday, and that included some folks from the football team because I'm friends with them. So my dad even took back the offer of taking me along, and I got stuck at home. This sort of thing has been happening since my mother passed away. It's always been very obvious to me that my dad has had a favorite, and it's not me. I never even had a problem with it, but that day I just kind of lost it. I started yelling at my dad, and we had a huge fight because of the way he was acting and had been treating me ever since my mother passed away. He never praised me even when I achieved something big like winning competitions or doing well in class, but my brother received praise for even the smallest of things. He also behaved very differently with us. He was quite aloof with me, and around my brother he was a different person. He actually acted like a father with him, and I had always put up with it because I knew that my brother was a lot like him, so it was easier for him to connect with my brother. But that was no reason for him to treat me like this. I put my foot down and told him that if he left me home alone on my birthday and did not allow me to bring my friends over or even go out with them, then I would just do as I pleased, and they wouldn't even be able to stop me. But my dad threatened me and said that if I did any of that, then he would cut off my college funds and I would end up with nothing. I'm supposed to be starting college in a couple of months, so I couldn't risk it because I don't have any money of my own. So with a heavy heart, I had to let them go on the morning of my birthday, and I had to cancel all my plans. My dad did tell me that if I wanted to, I could go out with my friends as soon as they had come back, and he would give me the money for having an even bigger party. But that just didn't cut it because I wanted to go out with my friends on my birthday and not spend the day at home by myself. So I was really upset the entire day, and I cried myself to sleep that night. The next morning, though, I woke up to a surprise because somebody started ringing the doorbell very early in the morning, and when I went to check who it was, I realized that it was my grandpa. My dad's parents both passed away when I was little since they were pretty old, and my dad is the youngest of 4 siblings, and he wasn't exactly very close to the rest of his family. So after his parents passed away, we only spoke to and met his family on the holidays. But I used to be really close to my mom's parents, and we used to meet pretty frequently when she was alive since they would come over whenever they could. They live out of state, so they would have to fly all the way here to see us, but they always told us that it was worth it. After my mother passed away, though, things changed, and it got even worse for my grandpa because 8 months after losing my mother, he lost his wife as well. They got into a car crash, and my grandma fought for her life for a couple of days before finally succumbing to her injuries, and my grandpa ended up losing his legs in the car accident. He is paralyzed from the waist down and has to use a wheelchair to get around. So for the past 2 years, I've only been able to see him once a year during the holidays, and it's been pretty bad because he used to be so full of life, but after losing his wife and daughter, he has become very quiet and sad. Obviously, everyone feels terrible for him, but he says that it makes him feel even worse because he doesn't want people pitying him, and so I try to act like my usual self around him even though seeing him makes me want to cry because I just miss the person that he used to be. That's part of the reason why I've never told him about my weird relationship with my dad and my brother because I didn't want to make things even tougher for him. Sharing that with him would only make him feel bad because he wouldn't be able to do anything about it, and I didn't want to make him feel even more helpless. So whenever I visited him in the past 2 years, I would only stick to the happy stuff. But the day after my birthday, when he showed up at my doorstep with his nurse to surprise me, I ended up breaking down because I was so touched. A lot of people from the family had wished me, but for him to show up all the way here just to surprise me was something that really got to me, and knowing that not even my brother and my dad would have done such a thing for me, that's what made me start crying as soon as I saw him. So I got pretty emotional, and he had to console me for a while before I could thank him. I tried to cover up why I had started sobbing as soon as I saw him by telling him that I was just touched that he had bothered to fly out here in spite of his restrictions with the wheelchair and stuff, but I guess he figured out that something had gone terribly wrong, and after a while he started asking me where my dad and my brother were. Initially, I tried to make up excuses for them, but I was honestly exhausted from trying to cover up the fact that they were just terrible to me. So I told him the truth, and he seemed really shocked, and after he had processed it, he started coming off more angry than shocked. He told me that if I wanted to, I could live with him for the next couple of months until I had to start college. To be honest, that would actually be easier for me because I had decided to go to college out of state because I needed some space away from my dad and my brother, and coincidentally, my college is closer to my grandpa's place than here. So if I stayed with my grandpa, I would only have to drive for a couple of hours to go back home, whereas here I would have to take a flight back and forth. And it's not like I would be missed here. My dad had my brother, and my brother had my dad, so I didn't even have to think twice before I agreed to my grandpa's proposition. And he told me that we would be leaving as soon as my dad and my brother had come back home because he had a bone to pick with my father. So he stayed with me that day, and I told him everything that I had been going through for the past couple of years ever since my mom passed away. It was as if the floodgates had finally opened, and I had somebody to share all of this with. Of course, my friends knew about it, but it's not like they could help, and everyone has their own crap to deal with, and I'm not close enough to the rest of my family to be talking to them about this, so it wouldn't have made a difference anyway. When my grandpa asked why I had never told him about any of it, I explained that I did not want him to feel helpless, and he told me that he would have fought for custody, but honestly, it would have been very unlikely that he would get custody of me because it's not like my dad was actively mistreating me or depriving me of anything. But he said that he would have found a way to help me out and that I should have told him earlier anyway. I hadn't told him earlier, and this is how it was. I had to put up with the situation for a really long time, but this was the last straw for me, and my grandpa thankfully was here to finally bail me out. So the day after that, when my dad and brother finally came back home in the morning, they were in for a huge surprise. My grandpa usually treats both me and my brother equally since he's not my dad. But this time he didn't even bother to greet my brother. He didn't even wait before confronting my father about what had happened and what he had heard from me. And for the first time in his life, my father actually looked ashamed of himself, and it appeared as if he was nervous. I knew for a fact that he had always wanted to impress my grandpa, and even when we would be visiting him after my mother had passed away, he would make quite a show of treating me and my brother well. But I had no idea that he was this scared of my grandpa, and I kind of liked the fact that for the first time he was answerable to someone because of the way he had treated me. Anyway, after chewing my father out for a couple of minutes, my grandpa told me and my brother to go take a walk because he had to discuss some things with my dad in private, and he didn't want either of us coming back home until he had called us back. It was confusing, but it was obvious that we were not supposed to argue right now, so both of us left the house. My brother and I are not exactly friends, so we went our separate ways, and for about 45 minutes he was at one of his friends' places and I was at one of mine. When my grandpa finally called us back, he seemed to be in a terrible mood and was very angry, and when I walked in, it was obvious that my dad had been crying because his eyes were all puffy. That was shocking because my dad rarely ever cries, and I knew that something must have definitely gone down. Anyway, my grandpa told me to pack my stuff, just the important things, and the rest would be collected later. So I did what he asked me, and about half an hour later, I had a bag ready. Then we got into a cab and went to the nearest hotel, and there my grandpa told me that from now on I would be living with him. It was very convenient because, as I had said, it meant that I would be closer to my college as well, so I didn't exactly have a problem with that. But when I asked him what had happened with my dad, he told me that it was none of my concern right now, and he only wanted me to focus on my future. While I was leaving, I noticed that my dad had not said anything to me and hadn't even said goodbye, and my brother didn't even seem to care. So that was that, and 2 days after I had moved out of my house with my stuff, my grandpa and I took a flight to his place, and since then I've been living here. I didn't think that I would hear from my dad or my brother anytime soon, and I had stopped wondering what had happened between my grandpa and my dad because clearly my dad had been happy enough to let me go. But that changed 2 days ago because I received a message from my dad saying that he was sorry about everything and that he didn't realize that I had been feeling neglected. He acknowledged the fact that he had failed as a father and that he hadn't even realized it because he was so busy with my brother, the one child that he had managed to be able to connect with. He said that he had always considered me very different from him, and that's why he had always maintained a distance from me because he didn't think that he would be able to understand me. But with my brother, it was different, and he added that he considered not building a good relationship with me as the biggest mistake of his life. He had realized that thanks to my grandfather. I already knew all of that, so it didn't come as a shock to me, and honestly, I hadn't even minded the fact that he was more close to my brother than me since I was closer to my mom than to him. What I didn't like was the fact that he had mistreated me, and he didn't even realize that he had been treating me badly. But I guess he had come to his senses after I had moved out. He told me that he really wanted to apologize to me and said that he wanted to make things right. He told me that he knew that I had moved in with my grandpa now and that I intended to stay with him until college was over. But he would really want me to come back home to him so we could talk it out and work this out. That's what my mother would have wanted, according to him, and I think I agree that is probably what my mother would have wanted because when she was around, she was always pushing my dad and I to spend some more time together, but we never listened to her. However, I don't want to commit to anything right now, and so I haven't replied to my dad's message. If I'm being honest, I'm not even sure if I want to repair my relationship with them right now or not. I haven't even started college yet, but there are only a couple of weeks before I do, and even when I do, I only plan on coming back to my grandpa's place on alternate weekends, so that would be more convenient than moving back home. Besides, it's not just about the convenience, but it's also about the relationship that I have with my grandpa, and I don't have that with my dad or my brother, so it's not like I feel obliged to go back home with them to try and fix things. But then again, if he's trying, then shouldn't I? I've just been having a lot of mixed feelings about what my dad said, and I don't know what to do about this situation. What if I told my father that I did not want to move back in with him, that I wanted to stay with my grandpa? Edit. I honestly don't know why my dad would want me to stay back home. Whenever he and my brother would go on their fishing trips, he used to tell me that it was unsafe for us to leave the house completely empty, and even when we would take family trips when my mother was around, he would hire someone to look after the house. It's just a thing with my dad, I guess. As for whether I'm actually my dad's biological son or not, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I've heard of people treating their adoptive kids badly in comparison to their biological children, so I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not actually his son, but nobody has ever said anything to indicate that I'm not, and neither do I have any paternity tests to prove anything. So as far as I'm concerned, I definitely am his son, and if you ask me, I don't even think it matters if I'm his biological son or not because he has been the one who raised me with my mother. Biological or not, I'm his son in some way, and he should have respected that and treated me just like he treated my brother. Anyway, that's not the point right now, and to answer the questions that you guys had for me, I don't know if he's my actual biological father or not. If I find out, I'll let you guys know. Update 1. So after a lot of deliberation, I decided to ask my grandpa whether I'm actually my dad's biological son or not. I couldn't stop thinking about it after a bunch of people in the comments suggested that maybe he was treating me differently because I wasn't actually his son. And there was also the comment that my grandpa had made about trying to get custody of me if I had told him about the way my father had been treating me earlier. I started thinking that he wouldn't have said that if he didn't have reason to believe that he would have been able to get custody of me, so I felt like I just had to ask him, and I had to work up a lot of courage, but eventually I felt like I deserved to know the truth. Last evening, I sat down with him and I just blurted out the question without thinking much, and it took him by surprise, but then he told me that he knew that was going to happen at some point, and even though my mother had always tried to keep it a secret from me, I'm old enough to know now. And as it turns out, I am definitely my dad's biological son, and we know that for a fact because several paternity tests have been conducted to confirm it. Apparently, it's not my paternity that is the problem, but the incident that took place before my birth that probably made my father resent me. My dad had been neglecting my mother because of his work before I was born, and they had only been married for 2 years at the time and together for 4. She always regretted this, but my mother ended up having an affair with one of her friends, and my dad found out about it. She ended the affair and they agreed to get couples counseling, but a couple of weeks later, she found out that she was pregnant. The only problem was that she had no idea whose baby it actually was going to be. My dad wanted to terminate the pregnancy altogether, but my mother was not on board with that, so they had to wait for the pregnancy to get to a stage where they could conduct a paternity test. And until then, my mother's affair partner was very much a part of the whole process because it could have been his kid as well. And if it was, my mother said that she didn't want to be unfair to her future kid and had said that all 3 of them would have to raise me together. My dad obviously was not on board with that idea and insisted that only he and my mother should have custody of the baby no matter who the actual biological father was. But my mother wanted to be fair, and so they ended up fighting about this a lot. They decided to stay together because they actually did love each other, and it ended up turning out to be pretty bad for me because even though I was my dad's son, and after they found out about it, my mother cut all ties with her affair partner, it still didn't seem to be enough for my father. After I was born, a couple of more tests were conducted to make sure that I was absolutely and 100% my dad's biological child, and it had been proven. But in spite of that, my dad continued to pick fights with my mother until she threatened to walk out with me. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that my mother was right. She definitely shouldn't have cheated on my dad and should have tried to talk it out with him before going out of her way to look for love outside of marriage. But if my dad had given her a second chance, He should have actually tried to make it work instead of constantly picking fights with her. And I think he's a really confused man because even though he decided to stay with my mother and make it work with her in spite of her cheating, I guess he couldn't handle that and decided that he was going to take out all his anger and frustration on me. And the fact that I was nothing like him when it came to my personality, that probably just irritated him even more. And that's how we came to this situation where he really resented me for no fault of my own. When my mother was alive, he seemed to get along well enough with her, so I never would have been able to guess that they had problems like this in the past. But I guess it makes sense when you consider the fact that he had me to resent, so he didn't need to take out any of his anger on my mother anymore. Anyway, that's one part of the story, and the reason why my dad seems to feel so guilty about having treated me badly in the past is because my grandpa told him that he was going to cut him out of the inheritance. My dad's own inheritance had to be divided into 4 parts because of his siblings, so he didn't really receive a lot back then. But after my mother had passed away, my grandpa had apparently changed his will to leave everything that he had to my dad and his grandkids. However, after my grandpa had found out about the way that I was being treated by my father, he had had a discussion with him and really chewed him out. He had told my father that he was really sorry about the fact that his daughter had cheated on him, but that was no reason for him to still hold that against me since none of it was my fault. I hadn't even been born when it happened, and even though I was nothing like my dad, I was still his biological child, and that had been proven by several paternity tests, some which he had even conducted independently without my mom's knowledge so that my mother couldn't have interfered with the results. So he really had no reason to behave the way he did with me, and yet one day he had just decided that he was not going to treat me like his son and punish me for what my mom had done. That was not acceptable, and my grandpa had told him that after he had learned the way I was being treated, he could no longer allow him to expect anything from him, and now whatever share of the inheritance that my dad was going to receive, that would be going to me instead. My dad had been crying about that, and also because he felt like he was going to lose everything in one go. So when I asked my grandpa whether my dad was reaching out to me for the inheritance, or if he's actually sorry, my grandpa told me that he genuinely doesn't have any idea and that he has told me he knows, but he can't help me out here. For what it's worth, my grandpa told me that my dad genuinely seemed upset, but I still don't know whether he has any ulterior motives or not. And it is very hard to trust him after everything that has happened. So I guess I'm going to continue to not respond to my father until I'm sure. Update 2. So I'm in college right now. I started a couple of weeks back, and it's been great so far. I forgot to update you guys on what happened with my dad because, to be honest, nothing really happened after that message that he sent. I did not respond to him, and he did not bother to reach out to me again. So I guess he was only reaching out to me for the inheritance because if he had genuinely felt bad about everything, he definitely would have made another attempt to reach out to me. And now it's been almost 4 months since we last spoke, so I don't think he's going to be trying to contact me anytime soon. As for my brother, we were never really close when we were living together, and now we have absolutely no contact, and I'm definitely more than fine with it. The only person from my family that I'm still in touch with is my grandpa, and we speak every other day on the phone. I was a bit mad at him for hiding these things from me, but then again, he was only trying to do right by his family. I don't think I would have been able to handle the truth earlier anyway, so good call on his part for not telling me earlier. At least I'm an adult now and I can process this, but if I had learned about my mother's infidelity before, I don't know how I would have reacted. Knowing about her past has definitely changed my perception of her, but not in a way that I hate her now. It's just that I realized that she was a flawed person and not the perfect mother that I idolized. But it's fine. I'm always going to love her because no matter what she has done, she is still my mother. Anyway, that was it, I guess. Update 3. Hi, so nothing much to add. I'm still no contact with my family, but I'm graduating in a couple of weeks, and I guess somehow my father found out. He sent me an email congratulating me recently, and I don't know what to make of it. I thought about it for a couple of days, but then I decided not to respond because I'm fine with how things are going right now. I don't want to reestablish contact with him at the moment, and when I do, I'll let him know. So that's what I had to post an update about, I guess. Now on to the next story. Story 5. A new neighbor began watching me, carrying a rifle and leaving dead fish in my mailbox. Despite reporting him, the harassment escalated. February 4th, 2019. A few weeks ago, a new neighbor moved in across the street. To my knowledge, it's one guy who is about 40 to 50 years old. For the past few weeks since he moved in, he has been taking walks around the neighborhood, and every once in a while, when he passes my house. My living room has a window that can see into the front yard. He stands and watches me. When I go outside to investigate, he just says something to the tune of admiring my shingle work or stargazing. He has used these excuses before. He never comes directly onto my property when he does this. A few days ago, I came home, and when I went to pull the trash cans back from the street, my neighbor was sitting on his front porch with a rifle in his lap in plain view. I asked him if there was anything wrong, and he just nodded at me. I went back into my house and called the police. Now, the spot I called the police from was in my kitchen. The only way to look into my kitchen from a window is if you walked up to my living room window and peered to the left. After hanging up the phone, I turned towards the living room and saw my neighbor about 2 feet away from my window, peering in with a rifle. I ran into my room and locked the door. After the police arrived, I told them what happened, and they told me that since he wasn't pointing a gun at me, it wasn't a threat. The most they could do is trespass him. But by the time they arrived, he had left his house. Yesterday, I came home at around 10 p.m. and found a dead fish in my mailbox. Without any evidence, how can I stop my neighbor from harassing me? Can I get a restraining order against him? Relevant comments. Comment 1. Make a police report about the dead fish. Make the police take the report even if you don't actually know for sure who put it there. You have your suspicions. Tell them. If they refuse to take a report, calmly escalate the matter to an officer with a higher standing and don't leave until a report is taken. Keep all of the police reports you make and, as everyone else has suggested, definitely get a good home security system, preferably with several cameras. Comment 2. I don't know about the law, but I'd say you should get a camera installed and probably keep any evidence of things put through your door. Then speak to the police/lawyer to see what your options are. A deleted comment. I'm fully prepared for any future aggression, but I am looking for a non-violent route first. I don't think I had cause in any of my previous encounters to use force. Since then, I got cameras with night vision, motion detection alerts, window tint for my living room, and big thick curtains. I also got a few of those stickers for the area of my house that says, "Insured by Glock," to deter any intruders. Now, the first night I got my cameras, I checked them the morning after to see how they worked. I made sure that there are no blind spots and all of them are fixed with no movement at all. When I checked the cameras the morning before, someone walked up to them wearing all black, including a mask, and pointed them down. When I left for work that morning, someone spray-painted a knife on my mailbox. I filed a report with the postal inspector and called the police. The police said without any video evidence, there wasn't much I could do. That night, I woke up to a loud noise hitting my house every so often. I checked the cameras and couldn't see anything, so I went out and investigated and noticed small holes in my house. Looking around the ground, I saw discharge rounds. I called the police again and confirmed that it was .22 shots from far away. I have a concrete home, so that would explain the lack of penetration. The police offered to have a car patrol the neighborhood and sit outside for 3 days, and nothing happened. I asked them if I could get a protective order from my neighbor who has a history of being hostile, and they said since I had no direct evidence implicating him that I can't file it out of nowhere despite previous confrontations. I filed another report with a different officer and got the same spiel. I asked them to take fingerprints of the bullets then, and they chuckled and put the bullets in a bag and left. 3 days ago, I heard shots again and checked the cameras and noticed they were facing my neighbor's house, just where I put them, and I saw a silhouette shooting from the middle of my street before stopping and running to the back of my neighbor's house. After that, I called the police in my room while watching the cameras. The police came and walked me through the same BS as last time, even after I showed them the cameras. They knocked on my neighbor's door and he claimed he heard and saw nothing. After they left, I asked him if he was telling the truth, and he looked at and smiled. It was very unnerving. I don't know what to do at this point. Top comment. OP, a suggestion for you might be to purchase a trail camera, essentially an outdoor camera that runs on batteries and records to a memory card, and try to place it somewhere non-obvious on the outskirts/edge of your property. A few other thoughts. Go to your local county courthouse and actually inquire there as to what the requirements are for a restraining and/or no-contact order. The police may not be the best persons to ask about if your neighbor qualifies for one. Contact your local chief of police and let them know your property has been vandalized and shot at. Ask if there's anything else that can be done. Update. April 23, 2019. 3 months later. This similar behavior is something I suffered over the course of 1 to 2 months in Florida. I made posts in r/legal advice asking for help and got reasonably good answers. Unfortunately, my neighbor pushed it too far and tried to break into my house in the middle of the night after a series of weird, escalating behavior. As a result, I shot him multiple times. I was questioned and interviewed over 7 hours and then released due to Florida's Stand Your Ground laws. Turns out the neighbor was mentally ill and the family is currently trying to sue me for wrongful death. Hope this goes better for OP than me. I should have just moved. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My sister flirted with my boyfriend and attacked me when confronted. Drama erupted at my wedding when my parents forced a reconciliation. I'm 28 and my sister is 26. We haven't communicated for about 6 years because of a terrible tragedy, which I will explain in a bit. As we grew up, my parents, for whatever reason, never discouraged our intense sibling rivalry. They urged us to compete instead. In retrospect, I don't think that was a wise decision because it made us incredibly jealous of one another. If they had dealt with this sooner, maybe our relationship would have been better. We could sometimes put aside our differences while we were younger, but as we grew older, our hostility increased. When we got to high school, we didn't talk much to one another, and we both liked it that way. I only saw my sister when I returned home from college after high school. Compared to being with someone who was disagreeable all the time, this was a relief. I started dating my fiancé around the time I was about to graduate. After 3 years of friendship, he finally worked up the nerve to ask me outright. Before I graduated, I said yes, as we had been friends for years and I thought he was amazing. He and I moved in together after I graduated. After 3 months of dating, I made the decision to present him to my parents one weekend. It just so happened that my sister, who had just begun college, chose to stay at home that same weekend. With both of us present at the same moment, it was already a formula for disaster. My life was going great at that point. I had my own apartment, a job, and a cute partner. But things weren't going as smoothly for my sister. She was disappointed that she couldn't get into her first choice of college and had to settle for her second. Later, my parents explained that she kept returning home so often because she was struggling to make friends at college. I could tell my sister wasn't happy when I told my parents about my relationship. As I introduced him, she pouted in the background. When I introduced her, she instantly turned on her charm, despite the fact that my partner was aware of the strained relationship I had with her. It felt weird, but I tried not to let it upset me. Then, however, things became much stranger. While we were all sitting around, my sister continued trying to chat to my boyfriend, since she was too interested in his life. Despite our discomfort, neither of us spoke. Then she went too far. During dinner, she started to overtly flirt with him in front of me. She was obviously trying to irritate me. She wasn't subtle. I attempted to ignore my family's turmoil for a while, since I didn't want my partner to notice. I finally lost it, though, as she went on. I became enraged as she was openly flinging herself at him. I informed her that her behavior was disgusting and told her to stop. She continued to speak to him while rolling her eyes. That's when I lost it. I screamed at her, telling her that since she was making him feel uncomfortable, she should respect him as he was my guest. Even worse was her reaction. Helping my boyfriend realize he had alternatives and that he deserved better, she remarked with a sly smile. I was angry at the way she stated it. We began yelling at one another, and I became so irate that I branded her a loser and said she was resentful because she wasn't performing as well as I was. That struck a chord. The words had a profound effect on her, and before I could respond, she snatched my hair and gave me a slap across the table. I was too shocked to react at first because we hadn't fought physically since middle school. However, the situation swiftly turned into a full-fledged altercation. My boyfriend and our parents had to break us up because we had gotten so violent. We were both bruised and scratched by the end, yet we were still yelling at one another. After attempting to reassure me the entire time, my partner was able to finally pull me away, get me into the car, and drive us home. I was glad to have him on my side, since without him the conflict might have lasted even longer. I didn't speak to my sister at all after that happened. We had argued before, but it had never been this savage. This was the last straw for me. It was already easier living apart from her, and I no longer felt compelled to think of her as a member of my family. Even though my sister wasn't prepared to apologize, my parents called me the day after the fight to let me know they had chastised her and hoped we might work things out in the end. I informed them that I was not interested in finding a solution. I wanted our connection to stay as it was, non-existent, and I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I reminded my parents that they were partially responsible when they attempted to persuade me otherwise. They had, in a sense, encouraged our intense sibling rivalry while we were growing up and had never addressed it. My sister and I didn't want to be around each other, so they weren't shocked. They disagreed with me, so we got into a fight about it. They admitted their error and apologized over the phone a few days later. I forgave them, even though it felt a little empty at the time. I didn't want to break up contact with my parents, even if I had decided to stop talking to my sister. That incident happened 6 years ago, and I haven't spoken to my sister since. As long as they don't put any pressure on me to get back together, I don't mind if she and my parents continue to have regular contact. We don't talk much, and even on holidays we avoid each other, even though I've seen her at family get-togethers. That's how I like it. We don't get along, and everyone in the family knows it, but nobody knows why. They just know that we got into a fight and that none of us has looked good ever since. After 6 years of concealing the information, I eventually came clean at my bridal shower. Because we weren't precisely adhering to traditional norms, my maid of honor only invited close friends and family, including my fiancé, to the ceremony. My parents surprised me by inviting my estranged sister as well. What they were thinking, I don't know. I was in disbelief when my folks showed up with her. My sister appeared just as shocked to see me, and a tense standoff occurred as the room went silent. My parents came over to us after what seemed like an eternity and said that enough time had gone by and that they hoped we could get back together. They thought we were now older and wiser. My sister's look made it obvious that our parents had deceived her into going. I told my parents that on such a significant day, they had no right to surprise me. I gently but forcefully requested my parents to accompany my sister on her departure before she could say anything. Instead of leaving, they insisted that I move on from the past while pretending that nothing important had occurred. Their contemptuous behavior angered me. I gave a detailed account of the full incident that occurred 6 years ago in order to correct the record. I asked whether everyone in the room believed I could just forgive and move on after making sure everyone knew exactly what had transpired. I then went to my parents and asked, "Would you still believe it was so easy to let go if I had married someone else?" Of course, things would have turned out differently if I had wed someone else. However, when I first took him home to meet the family, my sister had shamelessly flirted with the man I was marrying in front of me. She had done it without guilt, as if he were a competitor in a competition he had never agreed to. She did all of that, but more than that, she attacked me first because I called her out on it and called her a loser. It was traumatic for me because I had never before experienced someone attempting to physically harm me in that manner. She never apologized to me in the 6 years that followed, acting as though nothing had happened. I didn't feel pressured to let go of the past or forgive her. I thought it was more crucial to keep myself safe and keep someone like her out of my life. It was ridiculous of my parents to think they could just take her to my bridal shower and expect us to get back together. Luckily, my sister recognized her error and departed before my parents could continue their argument. I imagine my sister wasn't happy about being duped too, so my mother followed her, probably to please her. For a brief period, my father stayed with me, but I told him that he had let me down and that I didn't want to speak to him at that time. I was acting like a brat, and he got annoyed and accused me of being unreasonable, saying that it was pointless to cling to something that had happened 6 years before. I told him to go because I didn't want to quarrel with him, even though I didn't think I was being a brat. After a few minutes, he departed. I had to take a few moments to gather myself after that, since I was so overwhelmed. Thankfully, I had the support of my fiancé and maid of honor, and I quickly returned to my normal self. Since I needed a diversion and didn't want to worry about my dad or sister, everyone else complied. We carried on with the festivities as if nothing had occurred. My fiancé and I went home after the encounter and didn't talk about it again. Since the incident, which happened around 5 days ago, I had not heard from my parents, but I was fine with it. After what they did, I thought we should take a break. I didn't anticipate hearing from them immediately, but they did finally get in touch. Not to apologize, but to blame me for my sister's situation. My mom called this morning. When I replied, she told me to get in touch with my aunt and make sure she gave my sister the job she had been talking about. My mother was upset and scared, and I had no idea what she was talking about, so I told her to calm down. She continued by explaining that layoffs and downsizing at her prior workplace had left my sister unemployed for about 6 months. A few weeks ago, she realized she could no longer afford the rent and had to return to live with our parents. She had been looking for work, but she had not been able to locate a position that paid enough or that she enjoyed. My aunt, who was starting a new business, and my mother had talked about this. My aunt had originally decided to make my sister the head of marketing because she had prior marketing experience, but after the bridal shower incident, when I told my aunt what had happened 6 years earlier, she stopped responding and finally canceled the offer. I wasn't shocked because I had always been my aunt's favorite, and I thought that was a reasonable explanation. My aunt replied that it was clear from her knowledge of the incident I recounted that my sister had serious anger management problems. When my mother forwarded her mail to me, the fact that my sister had not even apologized during the bridal shower infuriated my aunt. In addition, my aunt said that although she had originally decided to hire my sister due to their familial ties, she had just interviewed a better qualified applicant for the position. Instead, she made the decision to offer the job to the better qualified candidate. That made perfect sense to me, and I was really happy that my aunt had changed her mind. After receiving my aunt's note, I told my mother that there was nothing I could do about it. I wanted to avoid my aunt feeling pressured to recruit my sister just because they were related, as I had witnessed the detrimental impacts of nepotism in the workplace. It was evident that my aunt had identified a more qualified candidate for the position, which was the true reason my sister was not employed. I didn't want to get involved because my aunt was in charge of this. My mother became irate when I promised her that I wouldn't attempt to harm my sister's standing or reputation in the family. At my bridal shower, she started screaming at me, saying that I had ruined my sister's chances by bringing up the past. Considering how much it would affect my sister, she said I didn't need to bring up the incident at my bridal shower. She said I deliberately portrayed my sister as unstable and evil in order to win the family's pity and position myself as the nice one. Just so you know, when I described the incident, I wasn't concealing anything. I freely acknowledged that prior to her physical assault, I had called her a loser. But I don't think her violent response was justified by the name-calling. My mother's accusation that I brought up the incident purely to harm my sister's reputation was unfair. After giving it some thought, I hung up the phone and blocked my parents. I wondered if it was the correct thing to bring up the past. My mother had claimed over the phone that I hadn't given my sister a fair opportunity to demonstrate her growth over the years, and that it was unkind of me to bring up the fight, particularly when it cost her a job offer. Update 1. Hello Reddit. I want to thank everyone who took the time to leave a comment before I talk about what transpired after my first post. Thank you very much for your guidance and good remarks. Since my sister had previously been prohibited from contacting me for 6 years, my parents were unable to get in touch with me directly after I blocked them. They chose to visit my home since they had no other choice. With my wedding just a few weeks away, I was overburdened and very busy getting ready. I had just gotten home from work that day, and my fiancé and I had a last-minute wedding dress fitting planned. I instructed them to go when they showed there without an invitation. We knew that if we opened the door, they would continue the talk and aggravate me much more, so we didn't want to interact. They remained even after I threatened to contact the police. To be honest, I didn't want to contact the police, since I didn't want to handle the problem that way and it felt over the top. We agreed to let them in for a little talk, hear their side of the story, and end it there after talking it over with my fiancé. After deciding on a course of action, we let them in and warned them to hurry because we had other obligations. Thankfully, my folks quickly got to the point. They clarified that my behavior at the bridal shower was the reason my aunt had withdrawn her offer of employment to my sister. They said that I was to blame for my sister's situation and asked that I contact my aunt to make sure she was hired. I paid attention, but I didn't want to say it again since it was the same argument. I told them that since I had already called my mother, there was nothing I could do about it. It didn't make sense for them to come to my house and talk about it again, since they knew I was busy and getting married in a few weeks. I was interrupted by my sister, who said they had come for reasons other than the job offer. This was our first chat in 6 years, so I was surprised. She continued by saying that she felt obligated to apologize, which is why she chose to come at the moment. I was unsure of how to feel. To be honest, I had severe misgivings and didn't trust her intentions. I chose to be straightforward and inquired as to whether she sincerely wanted to apologize or if she was merely doing so in hopes of getting the job. I informed her that because I couldn't help her, there was no use in wasting her breath if it was only about the work. Although she appeared a little taken aback by my candor, she said that our parents were present to talk about the job and that she had come to apologize. Even my parents appeared astonished when I looked at them, indicating that they hadn't discussed this, but my sister seemed unconcerned. She reaffirmed that she had no interest in the job and was only coming to apologize. She claimed to have thought back on her behavior during the previous 6 years, but she had always found an excuse not to apologize. She was unable to deny that she had mistreated me after the bridal shower. Her tone and manner conveyed that she was serious, even if my fiancé and I were still processing the situation. She said that she had harbored resentment toward me since she was a young child because she felt compelled to compete with me constantly. She felt guilty for squandering her childhood and adolescence on that rivalry now that she saw how pointless it was in the real world. She was sad that we could have become friends, given that I had tried to get in touch with her multiple times. Because she always viewed me as a rival, she acknowledged pushing me away. It was very overwhelming to hear her speak all of this, and I'm ashamed to say that I started crying as she expressed her emotions. She then turned to face my fiancé and expressed regret for the way she had behaved toward him during their one and only meeting. She admitted that it was long past for her to apologize and that her preoccupation with outdoing me had caused her to lose sight of who she had become. When she was done, she didn't wait for a reply. She merely said that she needed to express herself and that we didn't have to forgive her. She promised not to disturb us again now that she had. Only my parents, my fiancé, and I remained in the room after she departed. We sat there in startled silence, trying to take in what had just transpired, none of us expecting this. My parents eventually departed without saying anything, and my fiancé and I went as scheduled to my fitting. Until we arrived home, we didn't talk about any of it. We started discussing my sister's apology approximately 30 minutes ago. Despite the 6-year delay, I thought my sister's apology was incredibly sincere and mature. My fiancé and I are still processing things, so we aren't sure if we should forgive her. I'm glad she recognized we could have been friends, and I've unblocked her. But I need more time to reassure her that everything is really okay. Update 2. I neglected to include my parents in my last update. Since their visit a few days ago, they have not gotten in touch with us. Since they haven't expressed regret for what they did, we want to stay away from them because they encouraged rather than resolved the conflict between my sister and me. I consider them responsible. Their disregard for my sisters and my sentiments is evident even after years of conflict and my attempts at forgiveness. We'll let them know in a few days that they won't be invited to the wedding. Update 3. I was married last week, and it was a stunning, ideal day. My parents were not present, as was to be expected. They sent an email stating that they would not be attending, stating that they no longer wanted to be a part of our lives because my sister and I had stigmatized them. I don't mind if that's what they decide to do. On a more positive note, I contacted my sister prior to the wedding to welcome her to the event and to accept her apology. Having her there made the day even more memorable, and she accepted with grace. I'm happy to be getting back in touch with her, even if it's unbelievable to consider how far we've come. My husband and I are excited about our honeymoon, and life is better than ever. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My stepbrother insisted that I leave the house during my stepfather's burial, believing it was his until the will revealed otherwise. 38-year-old Jake. I never imagined I would be getting ready for the burial of my stepfather. Memories sweep back like a tidal wave as I sit here, organizing old pictures and planning. Death seems to cause one to consider a lifetime of events, both positive and negative. At 9 years old, my mother, Sarah, married Richard, my stepfather. The wedding day seems to me like yesterday. Mom looked lovely in her basic white outfit, hope beaming in her eyes for a fresh start. Richard, on the other hand, seemed to be stressing his austere attitude by wearing a black suit even on what ought to have been a happy occasion. He insisted on a solemn demeanor that I would come to know all too well over the years. Richard was a rigid man right from the beginning, particularly when he turned to face me. He always seemed to be permanently frowning. Often, I questioned whether he simply had the means to relate to a child who wasn't his own or if he harbored resentment at having to assume the position of stepfather. Growing up with Richard was not easy. From my grades to my wardrobe to even how I handled my fork at meals, he attacked everything I did. "You need to work harder, or this cruel world will chew you up and spit you out," he said almost daily. Looking back, I wonder if Dad was attempting to equip me for life in his own flawed manner, even if at the time I believed he was just being nasty. His rigidity permeated every sphere of our life. I had to sit up straight, use the proper fork, and only spoke when spoken to during family get-togethers. Any departure from his expectations was greeted with a stinging stare or a harsh correction. Family vacations, which ought to have been light-hearted and leisure-filled, were more like military drills than pleasure excursions. Richard would schedule everything down to the last minute. Heaven help us should we stray from the plan. One vacation, I recall, we missed a turn and arrived at a museum 15 minutes late. For the rest of the day, Richard was in a terrible mood, grumbling about lost time and inadequate preparation. Everything changed 3 years following the wedding when my stepbrother, Michael, was born. Richard suddenly had his own son, and it was obviously clear whose favorite was. He poured love and compliments on Michael. Richard's smile was unlike anything I'd seen till he held his newborn kid. It revealed a part of Richard the first never knew existed, like a switch had been turned on. I was envious and furious. When I was 12 years old, I couldn't comprehend why Michael received all the love and attention while I just got harsh looks and criticism. The difference was clear and agonizing. Michael's achievements, no matter how little, were honored with great celebration. Even if they were notable, my own successes were greeted with a nod and a remark on how I can improve next time. Mom would try to reassure me when I protested to her about the unfair treatment. "Richard loves you too, Jake," she would say, her eyes begging me to understand. "That's just rough love. He wants you ready for the world." Still, it didn't feel like love to me. It seemed like continual disappointment, as Richard saw me always failing. Our family dynamic changed in ways I never would have predicted throughout the years. Mom became ill at 25, and we all gathered around her. Richard stayed stoic even then, but I sensed compassion when he felt nobody else was looking. When Mom thought I wasn't in the room, I would observe him softly changing her pillows or clutching her hand. It was the first time I understood that Richard's lack of affection could have been more a result of his personal constraints than of his sentiments for us. 2 years later, Mom passed away, and it felt as though the glue keeping our family intact had broken. Tears and quiet prayers defined the funeral. Richard stood like a monument all through the service, his face a blank mask, though the wall between us seemed to indicate some approval from the guy who had been my father figure for most of my life. Looking after Richard in his latter years was difficult, fighting the restrictions his aging body placed on him. He was as tenacious and critical as always. There were days when our conflict was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but occasionally, too, I felt short sparks of thanks in his eyes, like the time I stayed up all night with him during a sick attack or when I learned to make his preferred foods as he grew too frail to stand at the stove himself. Those were uncommon events, though, and most of the time I felt as though I was looking after a stranger who happened to live in my house. We were living in a tense truce, neither of us entirely sure how to close the distance that had widened between us over years. Richard's character made me never even consider entering a relationship or getting married. I wanted none of the same issues I was experiencing for my wife or girlfriend to confront. Richard's gone at 65, taken unexpectedly in the evening from a heart attack. Everyone is showing their respect as I get ready for his burial. Michael arrived with Emma and their children, Lily, 5 years old, and Max, 3 years old. I hadn't seen him in years until now. Though he seems older and more austere, I recall from our early years that he exudes entitlement about everything. The funeral was a depressing event. I stood there, listening to people talk about Richard, a fantastic man who always placed family first, a pillar of the community. And I wanted to find fun in the irony of it all, knowing the same man I did. Did they know the Richard they described seemed to be a stranger? Michael drew me aside as folks were parting once it was all over. I considered that perhaps he wished to assist each other in our sadness, to reconnect, or to share memories of our childhood. Rather, he delivered a startling blow that left me whirling. "So, about the house," he said, his voice laid back as though we were talking about the temperature. "I'll need you to leave by the end of the month." "Not sure." I glanced at him. "What are you talking about?" He groaned and cast an intentionally obtuse glance at me. "Clearly, the house. Dad turned it over to me. Ultimately, I am his genuine son. You never imagined he would leave it to you." I thought of myself as having been gut-pounded. This was how it turned out. All these years of trying to be the son Richard wanted and of looking after him. Part of me wanted to fight for what I felt I had earned over years of conscientious living. But another side of me, the one still feeling like that 9-year-old lad yearning for affirmation, wanted to withdraw. "Fine," I answered, my voice empty. "I'll be out by the end of the month. Not only for Richard, but for the family I never really had. For the bond one had always hoped would grow between Richard and me but never did." As I watched Michael walk away, arm around Emma, kids running ahead, that evening I began packing among boxes of memories I wasn't sure I wanted to save. Sorting through years of accumulated belongings, I couldn't help but wonder whether Richard had been right all along. Sometimes you still ended up with nothing to show for it. The world was harsh. Update 1. I sold out of my childhood house a week ago. For now, Mom's sister, Linda, is here with me trying to decide what to do next. Thinking about Michael and how we got here, I lie awake at night staring at the foreign ceiling. Michael obviously was the preferred child growing up. Richard doted on him in a way he never did with me. From the time he was born, birthday celebrations with all his friends invited, new toys just because, pleased smiles when he brought home a good report card. All things I had longed for but never received. I recall one birthday Michael was around 8 years old. Richard hired a whole arcade for his buddies and himself. At the time, I was 17 and couldn't help but contrast it with my own birthdays, which often featured a quiet meal and perhaps a small gift. But Michael aged, and something changed. The sweet little lad who used to follow me about, wanting to play, developed into a depressed adolescent who appeared to hate everything and everyone. He started to treat me like I was invisible and spoke angrily back to our parents. It was like seeing a stranger seize my little brother's body. One specific occasion comes to mind when he was around 16. Richard asked us about his marks when we were having dinner. Richard asked us both this kind of inquiry all the time. It was a regular one. Michael burst this time, though. He began screaming about how he despised living under Richard's control and how sick he felt of the pressure. He bolted from the house, slamming the door so fiercely a picture fell from the wall. Richard seemed to be sitting there, looking older and sadder than I had ever seen him, instead of the angry man I had anticipated to pursue Michael and drag back. Michael's behavior just became worse as he grew older. He began courting a series of girls, each relationship ending badly. Late nights, missing curfews, and shouting battles with Richard that rocked the home abounded. I tried to keep out of it, but the continual stress would inevitably affect me. Michael laughed it off when Richard tried to discuss respect and duty. "You can't control me anymore," he would say, and Richard would get this expression. A mix of wrath and despair that I had never seen before. Then arrived the day he turned up with Emma as his bride. Not even among us knew he was seeing someone seriously, let alone getting ready for marriage. Walking in with Emma, little more than a teenager herself, he said they had eloped. I shall never forget Richard's expression. For once, he was silent. Mom tried to calm things down and welcome Emma into the family, but the air was clearly charged. Richard seemed to be straining to keep his cool and to find the proper words to speak to his kid. Emma claimed she wanted to live free from family meddling apart. Michael thus packed his luggage and left, simply as that. He pledged to visit and keep in touch, but those pledges soon dropped off the list. Weeks became months devoid of his communication. His calls were always quick and often tinged with conflict. I assumed definitely he would come back when Mom fell ill, but he did not. He asked her periodically how she was doing but always had a reason for why he couldn't visit. Work was hectic, the kids were sick, the car was in the shop. Something was always there. Hoping it would be Michael. I recall sitting next to Mom's hospital bed and seeing her eyes flash every time the phone rang. More usually than not, it wasn't. It was me who had to phone Michael to let him know Mom died. He sounded very offended, full of regret for not visiting more frequently. He claimed he would try to make it to the funeral, but ultimately he did not show up. Just a flower arrangement delivered to the funeral house, accompanied by a card offering his sympathies. Feeling his absence like a physical hurt, I stood at the burial, wondering how we had become so far apart. And right now, here we are, not motivated by love or obligation. The prodigal son returns for what he can gain. Thinking about how he swooped in and grabbed the house, acting as though he had some right to do so when he had left us years earlier, makes me enraged. I consider all the evenings I spent seeing to Richard, all the doctor's visits I accompanied, all the meals I made, and all the expenses I paid, and for what? To be thrown aside just like I never really mattered at all. But my phone calls as I'm staggered in these terrible ideas. It is Mr. Thompson, Richard's attorney, telling me he has to talk about something vital. He sounds serious and asks me to come back to the house tomorrow. Uncertain on what to believe, part of me hopes there's a mistake and maybe I won't have to abandon my house after all. Knowing how let down I have been in the past, another side of me is terrified to hope. I wonder what tomorrow will hold as I hang up the phone. Whatever it is, I am clear on one thing. This is not going to be easy. I toss and turn the remainder of the night, my head ablaze with possibilities. Something so crucial that Mr. Thompson had to see me personally. Richard left something for me after all, is it conceivable? Alternatively, is this only another letdown in a long run of disappointments? Feeling like a stranger, I stood before my childhood house the next day. To my astonishment, Michael's car was also in the driveway. Already breathing deeply, I entered. The familiar creak of the front door sent a pulse through me. Sitting at the dining room table, Mr. Thompson had a stack of documents before him. There were Michael and Emma as well, clearly agitated. With his demeanor unreadable, the attorney motioned for me to sit down. Down-seated, well aware of the tension in the room. "Thank you all for coming," he said with a firm, businesslike voice. "I know this is a tough period, but there are some crucial issues about Richard's will we should talk about." Michael slanted forward, a smug grin on his face. "Let's wrap this up. I would want to start right away, as I have plans for this home." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, seeming uncomfortable. "We should really talk about that. Richard's will states that Jake has been left the house and, in fact, all of his possessions." The room went still. For a time, I felt as though I couldn't breathe. Had I heard him precisely? After all these years of believing I was never good enough, Richard had left everything to me. The first to react was Michael. "What?" he yelled, leaping to his feet so fast his chair dropped backwards. "That's not possible. The real son of his father is me. He wouldn't hand everything to Jake." Mr. Thompson stayed cool under Michael's rage. "I'm rather worried it's rather obvious. Richard's will specifically says that Jake is to inherit all of his possessions, including the house, his savings, and his personal items." What I was hearing defied belief. It seemed illogical. Those years of criticism, of feeling as though I could never measure up, and now this. Michael was pacing now, his face flushed with rage. "This is nuts. When he composed this, he must have been insane. I'll dispute it. I'll bring this before court." Mr. Thompson gave a headshake. "That is not what I would counsel. Richard prepared this will rather carefully. He included a letter outlining his choice and had it attested and notarized. Challenging effectively would be quite difficult." Michael turned to face me, his eyes flaming with resentment. "You did this, did not you? You somehow twisted him against me. Still in disbelief personally, I raised my hands. About any of this, I knew nothing. I assumed he was forwarding everything to you. Before things could get much more heated, Mr. Thompson stepped in. If I may, I think Richard's letter might help to clarify his choice. Pulling out an envelope, he started to read. To his sons. Should you be reading this, I am gone. Though I hope I can clarify, I know you too may find my choice shocking. I have made lots of mistakes in my life. Among my largest was not treating both of my sons equally in terms of love. I expected too much from Jake, was too demanding, never showed enough affection, and I treated Michael too kindly. I never set appropriate limits or imparted any lessons of value. As I considered my life in my last years, I came to see something crucial. A real son is defined by behavior rather than blood. And in that sense, Jake behaved as a real son ought to do. He stayed with me through trying circumstances and looked after me even when I didn't deserve it. All the traits I attempted to teach but failed to show myself, patience, kindness, and responsibility, he exhibited. I am so leaving everything to him, not as a punishment to Michael, but rather as a tribute to the kid who really embodied the ideals I cherish. I hope you both have the compassion to see and pardon the errors of an elderly guy. The room went still once Mr. Thompson closed his book. Tears came to me, a lifetime of feelings rising inside me. All those years I felt Richard didn't care, that he considered me a disappointment. But he had been observing, noting, valuing in his own unique sense. Michael froze momentarily, his face a mask of shock and rage. Then he silently seized Emma's hand, rushed out, slammed the door behind him. His automobile started up and ran out of the driveway. The last act of disobedience was a screech. Turning to me, Mr. Thompson wore a gentle grin. I know this is a lot to absorb, Jake, he continued. Richard expressed his preferences quite precisely. He wished for you a safe future, free from financial concerns. I nodded, still not sure I understood exactly what had transpired. Thank you, I managed to say. I need some time to consider all this. Mr. Thompson stopped as he neatly folded his documents. There is still one more item. Your stepfather left you a personal note as well. You read it in private? He questioned. He gave me an envelope with my name written in Richard's recognizable handwriting on it. I took it, knowing that within were words I had waited a lifetime to hear. With shaky hands, I sat by myself in the quiet house, flipping the envelope in my hands after Mr. Thompson departed. At last, I plucked the will to open it and read. Jake, dear, though I know I've never been excellent at communicating my emotions, hopefully this letter will help to offset some of my faults. I'm glad of the man you have evolved into. Though I failed as a parent, I had a challenging upbringing and never taught appropriate affectionate behavior. I reasoned that the best way to equip you for life was to be rigorous and challenge you. I regret the suffering I caused you. Now I understand I was mistaken. Particularly in these last several years, your compassion and commitment have shown me what actual strength and integrity look like. You now, more than ever, reflect the guy I always dreamed you would be. I apologize for not telling you these things when I was living. With my last wishes and this letter, maybe you will have some peace and protection. Remember yourself, son. You are deserving of all the joy available. Love, Richard. Tears came down my face as I closed the book. All those years of feeling inadequate, of thinking Richard didn't care, and now this was overpowering. Over the next days, I battled to make sense of everything. Once a cause of stress and bad memories, the house felt different now. It belonged to me in a deeper sense. As much as legally, it was evidence of Richard's affection. Sincere, though spoken too late. Michael hasn't gotten in touch since he departed that day. Not sure whether he will. Though I know it will take time, part of me hopes we can reconcile someday. The pain is still raw, and our distance seems more than it did years ago. I have given family, the complexity of love, and the numerous ways people show it a lot of thought. Though often harsh, Richard's love was sincere. It was flawed. In his own sense, he was working to equip me for life and build my resilience. Though I wish he could have discovered a softer approach, I now better understand him. Regarding inheritance, it goes beyond just money and real estate. One has responsibility. Richard trusted me to continue on his legacy and to live the ideals he loved. Although it's a difficult work, I'm resolved to meet expectations. I have chosen to create a scholarship fund in Richard's name from a portion of the bequest. It's for children from difficult situations so they may have the education and chances they might otherwise miss. Taking the teachings he imparted on me and paying them forward seems like the proper approach to honor his memory. I'm still trying to make sense of everything as I sit here now, in the house that turned unexpectedly into mine. Fathers and sons have a complex relationship, marked by frequently unsaid feelings and misunderstandings. Richard and I never had the relationship I wanted when he was alive, but his last act has given me an opportunity to better know him, to see the love always there, buried under the surface. I wish Dad had told me these things during his lifetime. We could have had talks, cleared the air, perhaps even created the relationship I so yearned for. But life does not always provide us tidy ends or flawless closure. Right now, I'm concentrating on respecting Richard's memory by practicing the ideals he sought to inculcate in me. Work hard, be conscientious, and most importantly, love those who matter. I'm glad to be carrying on a legacy. Looking ahead, I experience a range of emotions. Sadness for what was lost, thankfulness for what I have, and hope for what is to come. Richard's unexpected legacy has given me a fresh perspective of family, love, and forgiveness, in addition to financial stability. Though I never expected it, this is a new chapter in my life, and I am ready to face it, bearing with me the lessons of the past and hope for a better future. That might ultimately be the best inheritance of all. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My stepdaughter passed away 4 weeks ago, and I caught my husband and his ex-wife together in our bed. My stepdaughter, Becca, 14, died 4 weeks ago. I've been in her life since she was 7 years old. We were extremely close. My husband, Derek, 40, his ex-wife, Sam, 38, and I, 35, get along very well. There has never been an issue in the 7 years that I've been with Derek. Sam has always been kind to me. She didn't even care that Becca called me Mom. 2. Right after Becca's passing, Sam had so much anxiety and depression that she was unable to be by herself. She has no family besides us, so we invited her to stay with us. Sam hardly leaves the house. She mostly just sleeps in Becca's room, which is completely understandable. I always tell her that I'm here if she needs me and that I want her to take her time grieving and that there is no pressure to go back to her home. Today, I needed to run some errands, so I asked Sam if she'd like to join me to get out of the house a little bit, but she declined and said she'd rather just stay at the house and sleep. I told Derek that I was leaving and that I would be back in 2-ish hours. He works from home. I also told him to check on Sam every once in a while and maybe try getting her to eat something. After stopping at the post office, I realized I forgot my library book that I needed to return, so I went back home to get it. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard moaning coming from mine and Derek's bedroom. I immediately knew what was happening, and my heart completely broke at that moment. I wasn't completely sure what to do, but I ended up deciding to confront them. So, I walked to the bedroom and opened the door and began yelling at them both. Sam started having an anxiety attack and ran to the bathroom while Derek kept apologizing profusely. I asked him what the hell was happening. He told me that he made himself and Sam some lunch, and they began talking about Becca and shared some memories, and then Sam ended up kissing him and he didn't pull back, and then it ended with them in our bed. They're begging me to understand that it was just grief that caused them to become intimate and that they both made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I love this man, and I love Sam. I'm heartbroken that they did this to me and put me in this position. I feel so stuck. Relevant comments. Comment 1. That would be hard for me. I understand grieving, but how is this excusing cheating? What happens next time he is sad? Edit. I misspoke when I said sad. Obviously, this is something beyond devastating. I still don't think it can be used as an excuse. P. I don't want to excuse his cheating. I think I want to divorce him, but I'm anxious about doing it right after we lost Becca. Comment 2. Probably together. Do you both own the home? If it's in your name, change the locks. Stay strong and don't listen to his excuses. I am so sorry this happened to you during such a difficult time. OP. Exactly what I was thinking, if I'm being honest. And yes, we both own it. When I told him to leave, he kept saying sorry and then said that he would leave and respect me wanting him gone for a while. Comment 3. Are you seeing a therapist? Perhaps you're dealing with a lot right now. It might be useful. P.S. I am in therapy. I've been with my therapist for other things for the last 3 years. She's been very helpful. I saw her yesterday and was able to figure some things out. Update 1. I decided that I'm filing for a divorce. I can't ever trust Derek again. It sucks because we had an amazing relationship. I thought he's always been great, so this was a complete shock to me. Last night, Derek came over to talk. He confessed a lot. Turns out, it wasn't their first time having sex like most people thought. They've been having sex since 3 months before Becca died. I am completely shocked and heartbroken. Sam also reached out last night and thanked me for everything I've done for her and told me she was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I did so much for Sam and considered her a friend. So this hurts a lot more than I can handle. This is all too much. As hard as this is going to be, I need to leave Derek and cut them both out of my life. I am ready to do so. I am done. Also, some people are saying I deserve this because I should have known better than to let Sam into our home around Derek. But you need to understand that I'm a giving person. I trust people more than I should. I truly thought Sam was an amazing person. I know it's unusual to become friends with your husband's ex-wife, but it's just how it went for us, and I shouldn't be blamed for what happened. Thank you to everyone who commented nice things and for the kind messages. You've all been helpful during this insanely difficult time. I appreciate it. Relevant comments. Comment. Out of curiosity, what are his excuses for cheating? Those two are going to be in a world of hurt once the guilt settles in. They're going to be asking themselves why it had to be Becca and will eventually come to the conclusion that it's their punishment for what they've done to you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. OP. He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed. We weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. It seems so wicked to me. How can he vent about our struggles like that and then go and have sex with Sam? It's just awful of him. I don't understand it. Updates 2. I'm getting lots of questions about some things, so I figured I'd answer a few of them. Have I told anyone about what happened besides my mom? Yes, I told a few friends and some family members. Most of them are supportive of my decision and aren't speaking to Derek. Where is Derek staying? Currently, he's staying at a hotel. Our friends refuse to let him stay with them. He's lost a lot of people due to his awful decisions. Has he tried fighting me on getting a divorce? Yes, he begged me not to file for divorce, but when I told him I needed him to just let me go and that I was too exhausted to fight him on this, he let it be and agreed to getting a divorce. Why isn't Derek staying with Sam? He told me he didn't want to continue to hurt me. So he told Sam he was done with her for good and that they have no reason to speak to each other anymore. I have no idea if that'll last and if they'll just end up together, but I truly don't care what they do anymore. I just want peace. What was Derek's excuse for cheating? He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed. We weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. Disgusting of them both, I know. Feel free to ask anything else and I'll try to answer. Thank you, everyone, for your support and advice. Relevant comments. OP on what happened to Becca. It was very sudden. She died in a car accident when she was with one of her friends and her friend's parents. OP on her husband's parents being supportive or not and if they know about his cheating. I get along with Derek's mom very well, but he's also a mama's boy, so it's kind of complicated. She will always be there for him. He'd stay with her if she didn't live across the country. She knows what he did and told me she had a talk with him but said that he's still her son and she'd help him with anything if he needed it. I'm thinking I need to cut her out of my life, too, which makes me really sad because we were close and talked on the phone almost daily. OP on if she has children with her husband. We've had 6 miscarriages total. All of them were in the first trimester. Update 3. I just found out that he is staying with Sam and not at the hotel. He told me it's too expensive to stay at a hotel and Sam is the only one that'll help him right now. I had a feeling this would happen. Just knowing that they are still probably sleeping together hurts my heart. I talked to a lawyer this morning, and we are proceeding with a divorce and Derek agreed to it. It's actually happening, and I feel some relief that he's not fighting me on this. My mom leaves on Sunday. I'm scared to be alone, but I go back to work on Monday, so I'm hoping it'll be a good distraction. I'll keep updating if anything else happens. Thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful for you all. Relevant comments. Comment 1. OP. How did you find out he was staying at his ex-wife's place? Anything he says should be taken with a grain of salt. He's not true to his words and going no contact with Sam. OP. He texted me this morning after we talked to lawyers and said he just wants to be honest with me. I told him to stop giving me updates on what he's doing in his life and that it's not something I need to know. It seems like he wanted to tell me to hurt me. OP on how she is doing. Thank you, I'm doing a little better today. My mom and I went on some nature walks and went out into the garden this afternoon. That helped. Becca loved gardening with me, so it made me feel closer to her. I decided to go through some of Becca's stuff today. I just found her diary in a box in the back of her closet. Would it be wrong to read some of it? I feel like it would help me feel closer to her. But part of me feels like it's wrong, too. I haven't told Derek that I found it either, and I'm unsure if I should tell him. What would you do? Relevant comments. OP on if she was closer with Becca prior to her sudden passing. Becca and I were very close. It felt like she told me anything and everything, but I honestly think all parents feel that way about their kids, so I'm kind of nervous to read it. Update 4. I figured it's been a few days, so I should give a little update. My mom is leaving in a couple of hours, so I'll be alone. I'm kind of nervous about it. She helped me stay distracted and kept me going. I don't know how I'm going to handle her being gone. I go back to work tomorrow, the first day back since Becca passed away. I'm looking forward to it, though, because it'll keep me distracted. Also, I did read some of Becca's diary. It made me love her even more. She was such a sweetheart. I went back a few months and saw that she noticed some weird behavior between Derek and Sam. She didn't mention that she knew of the affair, but she just wrote that she thought it was kind of strange that they all three would hang out more than usual without me. I might read more, but so far, I haven't found anything that's disturbing. Just her being a teenager and talking about crushes, fights with friends, happy family memories, etc. Tomorrow, I'm also talking to my lawyer, so I might have more updates on that. Thanks for the continuous love and support, everyone. Update 5. I started randomly getting a lot more messages/comments, so I figured I'd do another little last update. My first week back at work went great. I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but thankfully it did. My coworkers were so helpful and patient with me. On Friday night, I decided I didn't want to stay home all weekend alone, so I decided to drive up to my mom's. It helps that I have a 3-day weekend, so I can spend more time with her. I'm heading back home tomorrow. Also, for those of you that have messaged me hateful things for reading Becca's diary, I just have to say you aren't in my shoes right now. Telling me I'm a bad mom because I'm reading her diary is just ridiculous. I learned so much more about her, about how caring and sweet she is, and it made me love her even more. It's how I'm able to feel so close to her right now. So please don't tell me I'm a bad parent for just trying to get by one of the hardest times of my life. You have no idea what it's like. I don't have much of an update, so this will be it. I'll come back and update once the divorce happens, though. Thank you to those of you that have been nothing but kind and helpful. You help me feel less alone. I'll forever be grateful. Sam saw my Reddit post and is threatening to sue me. Sam made a fake FB profile to message me and tell me she wants to sue me for telling strangers about what happened. Derek supports her, apparently. I don't need this. Am I not allowed to vent about my life to people online? I just want life to get better. I'm so tired. You, Sam. You, Derek. Edit. Sam is in the comments, message me on here, too. Blocked her. Additional information from OP. OP on the message from Sam. No, I just ignored her. It might be an empty threat just to make my life harder, but I'm unsure. Her message said, so, I was scrolling through TikTok and ended up on an account where they read Reddit posts, and guess whose post they read? Yours. First, you tell friends and family, and then you go to a bunch of strangers and tell them our life story. I can't believe you. It isn't just your business to tell. Becca would be so disappointed in you. Be prepared because I think I'm going to be suing you for this. This was no one else's business. You did this to yourself, remember that. I'm actually baffled she thinks Becca would be disappointed in me. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I am thinking of breaking up with my boyfriend after meeting his family. I can't tell if I'm being overdramatic. I'm Alice, a 28-year-old graphic designer, navigating the waters of my first serious relationship. For years, my dating life consisted of casual dates and brief encounters that never blossomed into anything substantial. That was until I met Andy. We crossed paths at a mutual friend's art exhibit just over a year ago, and his easy charm and genuine interest in my work drew me in. Andy, with his supportive nature and shared passion for art, quickly became the anchor I had been searching for. Our relationship has been a journey of discovery and growth. Andy is my first proper boyfriend, and with him, I've experienced the joys and challenges of a committed relationship. He's been my confidant, my cheerleader, and my partner in crime. Despite my initial nervousness about diving into something so serious, Andy's unwavering support and kindness have made it easier to open up and trust. Last weekend, Andy invited me to his father's birthday dinner, describing it as a small family gathering. I was told it would be an intimate affair with just his parents and siblings, a perfect opportunity for me to get to know them better. Given my anxiety around large groups of people, this assurance was a relief. I wanted to make a good impression, and the idea of a low-key dinner was something I felt I could handle. As we arrived at Andy's family home, a sprawling estate that spoke volumes about his family's wealth, my nerves began to flutter. But I reassured myself, remembering Andy's words about the small gathering. However, stepping through the grand entrance, I was immediately taken aback. The house was filled with people, an overwhelming mix of aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, great-grandparents, and even distant relatives Andy hadn't seen in years. The unexpected crowd sent a jolt of anxiety through me. The house buzzed with energy, conversations overlapping, laughter echoing, and the clinking of glasses and cutlery. The grand hall, with its high ceilings and elegant decor, was bustling with activity. I felt a wave of panic but tried to maintain my composure. Clinging to Andy's side, I greeted his relatives, attempting to engage in polite conversation despite my mounting anxiety. As we moved through the crowd, Andy introduced me with a proud smile. "This is Alice, my girlfriend." Each introduction was met with polite nods and smiles, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. The sheer volume of people and the intensity of the social setting made me even more reliant on Andy's presence. Finally, we were seated for dinner in the beautifully adorned dining hall. I hoped the meal would bring a sense of calm, allowing me to settle my nerves and perhaps enjoy the evening. Little did I know, the most challenging part of the night was yet to come. Andy's mother, seated at the head of the table, turned her attention to me, setting the stage for an uncomfortable confrontation that would test the strength of my relationship with Andy and my ability to stand up for myself. As we pulled up to Andy's family home, I was struck by the grandeur of the estate. The house, with its stately columns and sprawling lawn, looked like something out of a movie. My nerves fluttered, but I reminded myself that this was supposed to be a small family gathering. As Andy parked the car, he squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's going to be fine," he said with a smile. We walked up the steps and into the house, and my first impression was one of warmth and opulence. The grand foyer was decorated tastefully with family portraits and elegant furnishings. However, as we moved further inside, it became clear that this was no small gathering. The buzz of numerous conversations filled the air, and the sight of so many unfamiliar faces made my heart race. Andy led me through the crowded hall, introducing me to various relatives along the way. My anxiety grew with each new introduction. "This is Alice, my girlfriend," he repeated over and over, his voice blending into the cacophony of greetings and small talk. I smiled and shook hands, trying to remember names and faces, but it was overwhelming. I clung to Andy's side, my lifeline in this sea of unfamiliarity. Every now and then, he would give me a reassuring look or squeeze my hand, but I could tell he was also trying to catch up with family he hadn't seen in a while. I felt guilty for needing so much of his attention, but my anxiety made it hard to let go. One of the first relatives we met was Andy's Aunt Karen, a tall woman with a booming voice and a penchant for dramatic stories. She greeted me warmly but immediately launched into a long-winded tale about her recent travels. I nodded and smiled, but I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Karen's enthusiasm was overwhelming, and I struggled to keep up with her rapid-fire anecdotes. Next, we encountered Andy's cousin, Michael, a charming man in his early 30s who seemed to know everyone. He gave Andy a hearty handshake and then turned to me with a charismatic smile. "So, you're the famous Alice I've heard so much about," he exclaimed. I blushed, unsure how to respond. Michael's easy charm made me feel even more out of place, as if I was the only one struggling to fit in. As we moved through the crowd, I couldn't help but notice the curious glances and whispered comments. Andy's family was clearly close-knit, and I was the outsider trying to find my place. My anxiety was a constant undercurrent, making it hard to focus on any one conversation. I found myself relying on Andy more and more to navigate the social setting. Finally, we reached the dining room, a grand space with a long table set for dinner. The table was beautifully decorated with fine china, crystal glasses, and elaborate floral arrangements. Andy's mother, Helen, was overseeing the seating arrangements, and she greeted us with a warm but slightly scrutinizing smile. "Hello, Alice. It's nice to finally meet you," she said, her tone polite but with an edge that made me uneasy. I smiled and thanked her, feeling the weight of her gaze. As everyone settled into their seats, I found myself seated between Andy and his sister, Claire. Claire, a woman in her mid-20s with a kind smile, leaned over and whispered, "Don't worry, it's always a bit overwhelming at these gatherings. Just stick with Andy and you'll be fine." Her words were comforting, but the anxiety continued to gnaw at me. As the dinner progressed, I tried to engage in the conversations around me, but it was difficult to keep up. Helen, seated at the head of the table, often directed questions my way, each one feeling like a test. "So, Alice, what do you do for work?" she asked. I explained my job as a graphic designer, and she nodded, her expression unreadable. It was during one of these conversations that Helen asked the question that set the tone for the rest of the evening. "Is Andy your first boyfriend?" she inquired, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. I nodded, confirming that he was. Helen raised an eyebrow and said, "I guess I can excuse it then." Confused, I asked her what she meant. "You've been clinging to Andy all night," she said bluntly. "It's understandable if he's your first boyfriend, but he needs his space too." The words stung, and I felt a rush of embarrassment. I tried to explain my anxiety and how the large gathering was overwhelming for me, but Helen was unmoved. "He's a man, Alice. He needs his freedom," she said dismissively. Before I could respond, Andy intervened. "Mom, can we not do this now? It's Dad's birthday," he said, his tone frustrated but calm. I felt a surge of gratitude toward him, but also a pang of disappointment that he didn't fully defend me. As dinner continued, I noticed the occasional sidelong glances and whispered comments from other family members. I felt isolated and uncomfortable, the sense of being an outsider growing stronger. Claire tried to engage me in conversation, offering support in her own quiet way, but it wasn't enough to dispel the tension. Feeling overwhelmed and close to tears, I leaned over to Andy and whispered, "I don't feel well. I think I need to leave." He looked concerned but nodded, helping me excuse myself from the table. As we left the dining room, I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Outside, I broke down, tears streaming down my face. "I felt so attacked in there, Andy," I sobbed. "And you didn't stand up for me. You didn't tell them how anxious I was or that you initiated some of the hand-holding." Andy looked stricken. "I'm so sorry, Alice. I didn't realize how bad it was for you. I just didn't want to make a scene at Dad's birthday dinner." "I understand, but it still hurts," I said, wiping my tears. "I don't know if I can be with someone who won't defend me when I need it." He started crying too, pleading with me not to leave him. I love you, Alice. Please don't go. I'll do better, I promise. I need time to think, I replied, my heart heavy. With that, I got into my car and drove home, feeling more confused and hurt than ever before. The next few days were a blur of emotions. Andy sent me messages apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but I needed space to process everything. I talked to friends and family, seeking advice and trying to understand my own feelings. Claire reached out to me as well, apologizing on behalf of the family and expressing regret for not doing more to support me. Her message brought some comfort, but the pain of that night still lingered. I found myself questioning the relationship, wondering if Andy could truly stand by me in difficult situations. The love I felt for him was still strong, but so were my doubts about our future. I knew I had to make a decision, one that would shape the path of our relationship moving forward. After the confrontation at the dinner table, I felt utterly shattered. My emotions were a whirlwind of embarrassment, anger, and sadness. Helen's words echoed in my mind, each repetition making me feel smaller and more out of place. The judgmental looks from the family members didn't help. I felt like an intruder who had violated some unspoken code of conduct. As I sat there trying to keep my composure, Claire, Andy's sister, leaned over and whispered, "It's okay, Alice. I feel that way sometimes too." Her words were a lifeline, a small but significant gesture of empathy in a room where I felt so alienated. I glanced at Claire, grateful for her support, but it wasn't enough to stem the tide of humiliation and isolation washing over me. I tried to focus on the conversations around me, but all I could hear were Helen's cutting remarks and the lack of support from Andy. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt on the verge of tears. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. I barely touched my food, too overwhelmed to eat. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact, wishing I could disappear. Every glance in my direction felt like a dagger, and I could feel my anxiety spiraling out of control. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I leaned over to Andy and whispered, "I don't feel comfortable here. I think I need to leave." He looked at me, concern etched on his face, and nodded. "Okay, let's go." I stood up, my legs feeling shaky. "I'm sorry, but I'm not feeling well. I'm going to head home," I said to the table, my voice trembling. There were murmurs of concern and polite expressions of sympathy, but no one made an effort to stop me. I felt like an outsider, tolerated but not welcomed. Andy followed me out of the dining room, and as soon as we were outside, the tears I had been holding back came pouring out. I felt so attacked in there. "Andy," I sobbed, my voice breaking, "your mother humiliated me in front of everyone, and you didn't stand up for me." Andy looked stricken. "I'm so sorry, Alice. I didn't realize how bad it was for you. I just didn't want to make a scene at my dad's birthday dinner." I shook my head, wiping away tears. "I understand that, but it still hurts. I felt so alone there, and you didn't even mention that you initiated some of the hand-holding and sticking together." He started crying too, his voice desperate. "I love you, Alice. Please don't go. I'll do better, I promise. I'll talk to my mom. Just please don't leave me. I need time to think," I said, my heart heavy with pain and confusion. "I don't know if I can be with someone who won't defend me when I need it most." Andy reached for my hand, his eyes pleading. "I understand. Take all the time you need. But please know that I love you and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right." I nodded, feeling torn. "I love you too, Andy, but I need space right now." With that, I got into my car and drove home, the tears flowing freely. The drive was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. When I finally reached my apartment, I collapsed on the couch, feeling utterly drained. The next few days were a mix of emotional turmoil and deep reflection. I received several messages from Andy, each one more apologetic than the last. He expressed his regret for not standing up for me and promised to talk to his mother about what happened. Despite his efforts, I needed space to process my feelings. Claire reached out as well. She called me the day after the dinner and apologized on behalf of the family. I'm really sorry about what happened, Alice. I should have done more to support you. My mom can be very direct, and I know her words were hurtful. I appreciated her apology and told her as much. Thank you, Claire. It means a lot to hear that. I felt so out of place and attacked. Your support helped, even if it was just a few words. I understand, she said gently. If you ever want to talk or need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here for you. Her kindness was a small comfort, but the pain of that night still lingered. I replayed the events over and over in my mind, questioning everything. Was I overreacting? Was I being too sensitive? Or was I justified in feeling hurt and unsupported? I sought advice from close friends, hoping their perspectives would help me see things more clearly. Most of them were supportive, validating my feelings and urging me to prioritize my well-being. You deserve someone who will stand up for you, Alice, one friend said. It's important that Andy understands that. Another friend suggested I talk to a therapist to help process my emotions and gain clarity. It might help to have an objective perspective, she said. Someone who can help you work through your feelings and figure out what you need. Taking her advice, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. During our sessions, I talked about my anxiety, the confrontation with Helen, and my disappointment with Andy's response. The therapist helped me unpack my feelings and explore my needs in the relationship. Through this process, I realized that my self-worth couldn't be tied to Andy's actions or his family's acceptance. I needed to prioritize my own mental health and well-being. I also recognized that while I loved Andy, I needed him to be a partner who would stand by me even in difficult situations. After several days of reflection and therapy, I felt ready to talk to Andy again. We agreed to meet at a park where we could have some privacy and a calm environment. When we met, I could see the worry and hope in Andy's eyes. He took my hands in his and said, Alice, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I talked to my mom, and she understands that what she said was wrong. I'm so sorry for not standing up for you. I promise I'll do better. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and residual hurt. I appreciate that, Andy, but this is about more than just one incident. I need to know that you'll be there for me, that you'll support me even when it's hard. I will, Alice, I promise. I love you, and I don't want to lose you, he said, his voice earnest. I love you too, I replied, but I need to see that support in action. We need to work on this together if we're going to move forward. He agreed, and we talked about how we could improve our communication and support for each other. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. We both acknowledged our love for each other and our commitment to making the relationship work. As we left the park hand in hand, I felt a tentative sense of hope. The future was uncertain, but I knew that I was stronger for having faced these challenges head-on. And whatever came next, I was ready to face it with an open heart and a clearer understanding of my own worth. The days following the confrontation at the dinner table were filled with a mix of emotions. Hurt, confusion, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation I had experienced that night, nor could I forget Helen's cutting remarks and Andy's lack of immediate support. The humiliation still stung, and I found myself questioning everything about our relationship. I spent hours replaying the event in my mind, each time feeling a fresh wave of pain. How could Andy, someone who professed to love me, not stand up for me in front of his family? His reluctance to defend me, to acknowledge my anxiety, left me feeling vulnerable and alone. I started to wonder if this was a one-time oversight or a sign of deeper issues in our relationship. During this period, Andy's messages came frequently. They were filled with apologies and promises to do better, but each one felt like a band-aid on a wound that needed more than just superficial healing. I'm so sorry for what happened, Alice. I should have stood up for you. Please forgive me. Read one message. I talked to my mom, and she understands that she was out of line. I promise I'll support you better in the future, said another. Despite his words, my doubts lingered. Was I overreacting? Was I expecting too much? Or was this an important test of our relationship, one that had revealed critical weaknesses? I needed clarity, and for that I turned to my close friends and a counselor. My friends were a mixed bag of reactions, but most were supportive and empathetic. "Alice, you have every right to feel hurt," said Sarah, my best friend. "You deserve a partner who stands up for you, especially in front of his family. It's not about causing a scene, it's about showing solidarity." Another friend, Jessica, was more pragmatic. "Maybe Andy just didn't know how to handle the situation. It was his dad's birthday, and he might have been trying to keep the peace. But he should definitely make it up to you and prove that he can support you moving forward." These conversations helped, but I still felt a need for a more structured approach to understanding my feelings, so I made an appointment with a therapist. During our sessions, I opened up about my anxiety, the dinner incident, and my relationship with Andy. Feeling unsupported by your partner, especially in a challenging situation, can be very distressing, my therapist said. "It's important to communicate your needs and expectations clearly. Have you told Andy exactly how you feel and what you need from him?" I nodded. "Yes, I have. He says he understands and promises to do better, but I'm still unsure. It's hard to shake off the feeling of being let down." "That's understandable," she replied. "Trust is built through consistent actions over time. It's not just about promises, but about seeing those promises turn into actions. You need to decide if you're willing to give him that chance." Her words resonated with me. It wasn't just about what Andy said, it was about what he did moving forward. Trust had been shaken, and it would take time and effort to rebuild it. In the following days, I continued to reflect deeply on our relationship. I remembered the good times, the laughter, the shared interests, and the genuine affection we had for each other. Andy had been a source of support in many ways, but this incident had exposed a significant gap. One evening, I sat down with a notebook and listed out my thoughts and feelings. On one side, I wrote down all the things I loved about Andy and our relationship. On the other, I listed the concerns and the areas where I felt unsupported. This exercise helped me see things more clearly. With these lists in hand, I felt more prepared to have a serious conversation with Andy about our future. I needed to communicate my feelings clearly and see if he was truly committed to making the necessary changes. The evening air was cool as Andy and I sat on a bench in the park, the sun dipping below the horizon. We had decided to meet here to have one final conversation about the dinner incident and our relationship moving forward. I felt a mix of nervousness and determination, ready to lay everything on the table. "Andy, I want to talk about what happened at your dad's birthday dinner." I began, my voice steady. "I felt hurt and humiliated by what your mother said, and I needed you to stand up for me. It wasn't just about that moment. It was about feeling supported and respected in our relationship." Andy nodded, his expression serious and attentive. "I understand, Alice. I've thought a lot about it, and I realize now how important it is for me to support you, especially in front of my family. I'm truly sorry for not doing that." Taking a deep breath, I continued, "I appreciate your apology, but I need to see changes. I need to know that you will stand by me and defend me when necessary. Your family dynamics are something we need to address together. I can't feel like an outsider every time we're with them." Andy reached for my hand, holding it gently. "I promise I will do better, Alice. I've talked to my mom about her behavior, and she understands that she crossed a line. Moving forward, I'll make sure to set boundaries with my family and ensure that you feel welcome and respected." Hearing his commitment was a relief, but I knew actions would speak louder than words. "Thank you, Andy. It means a lot to hear you say that. I also need us to communicate better. If something bothers you or me, we need to talk about it openly and honestly." He squeezed my hand and smiled softly. "Agreed. I want to work on this with you. You're important to me, and I don't want to lose what we have." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, letting the weight of our conversation settle. I felt a sense of closure and a cautious optimism for our future. I knew rebuilding trust would take time, but Andy's willingness to address the issues gave me hope. Reflecting on everything, I realized how much I had learned about myself and our relationship. I had learned the importance of setting boundaries and advocating for my own needs. I understood that a strong relationship required mutual support and respect, especially in challenging situations. I also learned that Andy, despite his initial hesitation, was willing to grow and change for the sake of our relationship. This incident, while painful, had the potential to strengthen our bond if we both committed to improving our communication and support for each other. As we walked back to our cars, hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. I knew that future challenges would arise, but I felt better equipped to handle them. We would face them together, with open hearts and a commitment to each other's well-being. In the end, this experience taught me the value of resilience and the importance of standing up for myself. It also reinforced my belief in the power of love and partnership. With Andy by my side, I felt ready to navigate whatever came next, confident in our ability to grow stronger together. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Mom won big money and let her boyfriend stay in my house after she died of cancer. But 4 years later, his new girlfriend told me to move out claiming he owned the place. When I was 17, my mom came into money. She tried to keep it quiet, but she paid off my dad's debts, bought him a small house, paid off her debts, and paid for my sister's college and set up funds for mine. She had a boyfriend at the time, and shortly after, him and his son, who was 7, moved into our new house. Over the next few years, Mom bought my sister a house after she graduated college. Her boyfriend lived with us and didn't pay anything, but he did work. When I was 21, Mom got diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't good. She sat me and my sister down and went over exactly how much money there was. She intended to give her current house to me, and both me and my sister were left with a large sum at the end of it. She asked if I would allow her boyfriend to stay in the house with his son until he got his own place. I agreed. Before she died, she told her boyfriend he would need to look for his own place, but had time to save more for that journey. For the last 4 years, he has continued to reside in the house with his son. I haven't minded because we get along okay. I pay all the bills, but he does buy food for him and his kid. He has dated off and on and mostly kept the women out of this house, which I respected him for until his current partner. She's been in my house 3 times, and at first, besides feeling a little uncomfortable, I was okay with her. The last time this past weekend was the point where I lost my shit. I was making myself some lunch when she came walking downstairs. She grabbed a plate and went to grab food out of my pan. I asked her what she thought was doing. She started telling me how I should look for somewhere else to live, and leeching off my dead mom's past relationship as an adult was pathetic. I hollered for my mom's old boyfriend. He came down and I told him I didn't know what his current thing thought, but I wasn't going to be disrespected in my house. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes as he mumbled something about my mom promising him the house and he was just being kind letting me stay. First, that isn't remotely true. Mom pulled him and I together after she asked if he could stay to set expectations. My mom met him shortly before she won the money and told him girls that she had no intention of leaving him money. She did set aside a fund for his son for college when he gets there, but he cannot touch it. Only his son can. He has lived in this house almost 8 years without paying a dime. He should have plenty of money, and if he doesn't, that's on him. I told him he had 30 days to leave. I wasn't going to house someone who would lie and disrespect me in my house. He left that night with his son, but his ex-wife called to tell me I am cruel and an a-hole for her son losing his house. He is here every other week. I really feel like my mom didn't expect him to still be here, but my sister said she feels like I am breaking my promise to my mom, and that made me feel like maybe I am. The AITA? Update 1, February 1st, 2025. I do want to take a moment to address some things I saw in the comments. 1. There are trusts set up and neither me nor my sister has full access to the money left us. This was done both because my sister and I were in our early 20s when my mom died and she wanted to make sure we had some stability before we had access and to protect us from people who may try to take advantage, especially while we were grieving. 2. I have a lawyer. He has already informed me legally to my area what eviction laws are, and my mom's former boyfriend will be served with formal eviction papers just to cover myself even after today. So to the update, my dad came over, decided not to have my boyfriend over since he doesn't know about the money side, and I wasn't trying to have the boyfriend out the situation, this morning and brought along my cousin. For easier telling, I'm going to call mom's former boyfriend, Chuck. Chuck showed up about 10 a.m. my time and talked to my dad, then asked if he could have a couple of minutes alone with me. Dad nodded, so my cousin and him went into the kitchen, and Chuck and I sat in the living room. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to go as it had, but I'm glad it did. Chuck started with an apology. I don't remember all of the words said, but the basics were he missed my mom. He has been lonely but not alone thanks to me and his son. He was sorry for what had happened, that he got caught up in lust and let someone else fill his head with ideas, and that he owned up to his mistakes and should have never put up with someone who would disrespect me or my mom's memory. He tried to hand me a cashier's check for $15,000. He said it wasn't much, but he wanted me to know he appreciated me and living with me and that he wanted to pay back some of what he owed. I refused the check both in part because I never wanted his money, but I also don't want to give any possible legal leg for him to stand on if this is somehow him trying to stay. I told him the first part and told him to put it towards a house. He told me he is living with his sister but is going to look at houses with a realtor next week. He did say his son is asking about our next hangout date and said both me and my sister are welcome to arrange time with him. After all of that, my dad and cousin helped him get all the stuff out of the house that he owned. He had brought a U-Haul and he gave me back my house keys. He apologized again and left. Not what I expected, but it went really well and I feel a lot less like I let my mom down. Update 2, February 11th, 2025. This is probably going to be my last update unless something unexpected happens. But I thought I would just give a quick update on Chuck. So Chuck called me last week and again yesterday. He put an offer on a house and yesterday got accepted. They expected close date as early next month, but I am very proud of him. I know everyone expected more drama, and honestly, some of the comments had me worried, but it's been really good. He thanked me a lot for letting him have so much time here, offered me some money one more time for his time here, which I again declined, but I did offer to help him move in when the time comes. Moving sucks. He put down almost half for a down payment, so he definitely was saving money during his time here, and I'm glad everything that happened was an encouragement for him to get into a home of his own. I talked to his son yesterday after he got out of school. We are going to play laser tag this weekend with my sister, and he is excited for the new house, too. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother he'd never measure up to our late father after he lectured me about drinking and quitting soccer? March 11th, 2019. I have 3 older siblings. 2 sisters who are 28 and my older brother Chris, who is 26. I am the youngest child at 16. 3 years ago, our dad died of cancer after a pretty rough battle. Being 11 when my dad got sick, I remember it being a pretty scary time, not always understanding what was happening, but the one thing I always knew was that Chris was there for me. Obviously, it was also a very difficult time for Chris, but he really looked out for me during that time, and Chris has continued to be the same great guy and awesome big brother to this day. So, 3 weekends ago, I went to a party, drank too much, and I got drunk for the 3rd time in my life. I called Chris and asked him if he could come get me when I wanted to leave, and my friends, one of which was our designated driver who was sober, wanted to stay. Chris came to pick me up, worried that I was going to get in a car with a drunk driver if he didn't. The next day, he lectured me on my drinking problem and getting into cars with drunk drivers. Things got heated because I felt like he was assuming a lot because I'm a junior in high school and I've only drank 3 times at parties, which I feel is pretty normal, and I wasn't going to get in a car with a drunk driver. My DD was completely sober, so I feel like I was more responsible than he was giving me credit for. But yes, I was drunk enough to think calling him at 10 p.m. out of the blue to pick me up because I was tired was a good idea. Then, 2 weeks ago, Chris found out I quit the soccer team. He started lecturing me on commitments and talking about how I need to be doing an extracurricular for college and I shouldn't just quit because of laziness. Then things got heated and he started talking about my drinking problem again and then talking about my room being messy, and then we were really arguing and he was accusing me of being disrespectful. Then I lost it and told Chris he wasn't my dad and I didn't need him lecturing me and how he thinks he could replace dad, but he'll never be half the man dad was. I was mad and just looking for something mean to say. Chris left my room, and about 30 minutes later, came back in and apologized for overstepping. It was clear that he had been crying, but I was still mad and couldn't bring myself to apologize even though I knew that I should and that I didn't mean what I said. Chris left and went back to his place and we didn't talk for 3 days. 3 days later, I finally did the right thing and texted him a heartfelt apology for what I had done and thanked him for always caring enough to be there for me, and told him I spoke with the coach about rejoining the soccer team. He texted back hours later, Thank you, that means a lot. Since that time, we've only spoken sporadically over text, whereas we used to speak all day. I've asked him if he wants to hang out and he's always busy, or he says, maybe tomorrow. And then when I text him the next day, he doesn't reply until it's too late. Chris has come to every soccer game I've had over the past couple of years, but he's missed the last two. I have apologized again by text. I would do it in person, but I haven't seen him since our fight, whereas normally I see him a couple times a week. One of our things has been going to see Marvel new releases together. I asked him if he wants to go next weekend, and he said his girlfriend surprised him and took him this weekend. So I replied back, okay, maybe we can do something else together. I'd love to hang with you. I miss you. No reply yet. I know what I said was completely effed up and wrong. Besides being a very mean thing to say, it's not true at all. He's great. I understand why he's upset, and I know it's my fault. But now I don't know how to make things better. Chris was overbearing at times, but I would give anything to go back to that right now. Is there anything more I can do to fix this? TLDR. Got into a fight with my older brother a couple of weeks ago because I felt like he was trying to parent me. We got into an argument and I told him that he'll never be the man our deceased father was. This hurt my brother's feelings and things haven't been the same since. Relevant comments. Comment. You broke his heart, and I don't say that to make you feel guilty. I say that so you can understand that a text message apology is not remotely enough. You need to go to him, not wait for him to come over. You literally need to go to his place and apologize in person. OP, you're absolutely right that a text apology is not enough for what I've done. I want to apologize in person because he deserves one. So should I just show up to his place uninvited? Because I've thought about doing that. I asked to come over before and he didn't reply until it was already late, saying he had just got home but next time I could. Update 1. May 23, 2019. 2 months later, I thought I would provide an update to my first post. Someone advised me to write my brother a letter apologizing, which I did. I apologized for being mean and hurtful and that I was wrong for doing that. I also got him a separate card and wrote a message thanking him for everything he's done for me. I went to his house with my letter and card when I found out he was home to go talk to him. But unfortunately, when I got there, he was gone already, so I slid them under the door. When he got back home, he found them and read them, and then he called me to arrange to come see me. He came over here and I apologized in person for what I said. He was very straightforward with me and honest about my actions. He explained that the reason he had been avoiding me lately is because he needed some time apart because he was beginning to not like me. He said he loved me, but he didn't want to be around me sometimes. That was pretty hard to hear. He said that lately I've just not been very nice. The comment about our dad was by far the worst, but I make other snappy comments. He had tried to brush it off as me being just as a teenager, but had now decided it was best to let me know being a teenager is not an excuse to be a constant a-hole to everybody at home, is how he put it. He gave a few examples and looking back, he was absolutely right. It was pretty upsetting to hear. I know he wasn't saying it to upset me, and I was thankful that he was telling me, or at least I'm thankful now. I promised that I would check my attitude. He said a little more thoughtfulness was all I needed and that even though sometimes I act like an a-hole, he knows I'm not one. After we finished talking, we hugged. He told me not to forget that he loves me and that I'm great. Since then, I've been trying to be more considerate. I really am trying to follow the advice he gave me. It's been a couple months now, and I'm happy to say that it's working. Our mom told me a couple weeks ago that I'm a joy to be around. In the car earlier today, my brother told me that it's been really nice spending time with me lately. So that's good news. TLDR. Apologize to my brother for the terrible thing I said to him. He warned me that I was turning into someone that he didn't want to be around even though he loved me. I've worked on fixing my attitude over the past 2 months, and today my brother told me it's nice to hang out with me these days. Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting this to get big. Thanks for the advice and for the gold. Much appreciated. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Am I the A for leaving my boyfriend after nearly 2 years of dating because he bought lingerie for his best friend as a joke? My boyfriend, 28, and I, 24, have been together for a year and a half. I love him a lot, and he has been pretty amazing to me. He is also the sort of person who has lots of friends, and his close friends are pretty much family. He also loves to joke and play these harmless pranks on his friends, which sometimes makes me feel weird. Just for context, he has 2 female friends and 3 male friends. This is about my BF and one of his friends, Claire, 28. Claire is a nice woman, and we are friendly. My boyfriend also has never ignored me in favor of his friends or talked over me in front of them, which is why I don't understand if I'm in the right. They, my boyfriend's friends, had a recently escalated prank fight. I had made it clear to my BF that I am not good at jokes and I'm rather stiff, and he said he would keep me out of it. Claire, my boyfriend, and another friend, Kyle, 27, even had a huge throwing water balloons fight in Kyle's backyard. Then my boyfriend got pranked with dye in his body wash. Then Kyle got pranked by Claire. Something about whipping cream in oven mitts. But the issue is when my boyfriend bought a red lacy lingerie set, and he planned to put it in Claire's room the next time he went over. I said it was a tacky prank, and why would he buy lingerie? None of the previous pranks have been of this kind, and it makes me really uncomfortable. I also felt like if I was Claire, I would feel gross about it. But my boyfriend got mad and defensive and told me Claire is cool like that, and she would think it's funny. I admit I get a bit weirded out when he calls Claire extremely beautiful, and jokes about how she has always been way out of his league. But I thought it was nothing and they were like family, so I guess it was their thing. However, the lingerie prank had me put my foot down, and I said that he was wrong to give another woman lingerie, no matter who, when he had a girlfriend. We fought, and I said I wanted to break up, which he didn't want to, and I said that I was just overreacting. He said that I was too conservative and needed to open my mind when he had never given me a reason to be insecure. Claire called me and said that she and my BF have been friends for a long time, and inside jokes are just that, and I'll learn with more age. I still feel weird about this. My best friend is supportive of me no matter what I do, but I have started to feel like I'm blowing this out of proportion. My boyfriend says that the fact that he told me and didn't hide it from me shows that I'm the problem. I have started to feel like I've blown this out of proportion, and maybe it's my fault I can't take a joke. I really feel awful about this whole thing. Edit. The people asking what the prank is with the lingerie. Apparently it's an inside joke about how during their college days she had some problems with the color red, and the lingerie would have just given her a shock of some kind, I guess. I told my boyfriend it was cruel, but he said it wasn't a trauma thing, just an inside joke. Claire also said over the phone that the lingerie thing was just an inside joke of their college days. Update 1. My inbox got flooded with DMs and had to turn off Reddit notifications. When I posted this, I was ready to be called immature and ridiculous and get a couple of comments, but it seemed like the post blew up, and the comments were kind of eye-opening, to be honest. Before all this fiasco, my BF has always been nice to me, came with me to my grad school functions even though he found them very boring but would do it so that I could network. He builds stuff like furniture and helps out with handiwork all the time. He is also very funny, and at the very beginning I thought all his jokes were funny, and I sometimes wondered why he wanted to be with me, plus I was always busy with school and job interviews. His mom and I had even gotten close, and she has been saying how happy she was that we were together. I had always ignored his and Claire's weird dynamic because I told myself I was being insecure. I have male friends too, and I thought that just because we aren't like that doesn't mean my BF and Claire can't be close. Claire has also never been outright mean to me. She was just aloof, and I thought it was because I was new to the group. To the actual update. My BF and I broke up. I'm sorry, guys, but even after seeing so many replies on how he was cheating, I refused to believe it. I'm still in love with this guy, and he called me like half a day after I wrote this post and asked to meet. I met him, and he said that he understood where I was coming from, but I was always too uptight to understand that friendship is friendship. He and Claire had known each other for years before I came into the picture, and I cannot expect him to just ruin their dynamic. I asked him what sort of dynamic was red lingerie, why couldn't it be literally any other type of clothing? He told me he had it with my insecurities and that he and Claire talked, and apparently I was making them sound like cheaters and homewreckers, and that he thought it was better I found someone like me who thought the idea of a fun night was junk food and a movie indoors. That hurt a lot. He had always known I had insecurities about being called boring. He always complimented me on how his weaknesses were my strengths. Now he says things like this to me. Also, before this lingerie fiasco, I had never said a word about his and Claire's friendship. I always supported his pranks and practical jokes, no matter my opinions on them, because I thought it was his business what he did with his hobbies. And he leaves without even putting up a fight because his girlfriend didn't want him giving lingerie to the woman he constantly refers to as his sexy bestie. Claire didn't call or text after the breakup either, but Kyle did and said that he was sad that we broke up and he hoped I would be okay in the future. I asked him if my BF ever cheated on me. He said that my BF had only been a one-woman man when he was dating me, but he could understand that some women can't handle female best friends, especially if they look like Claire. I told him to F off and blocked him. It felt like he only wanted to gloat and hurt me because my BF left. I feel like I never knew these people. Claire and Kyle were always at least decent to me, if not nice. Did it make me a free target now that my BF has been telling his friends I'm an insecure child? I don't know what to do now. I have been told repeatedly by both my friends and sister that I dodged a bullet, but I have been breaking down like a kid again and again. I'm even thinking of going to therapy after feeling the most insecure I've felt my whole life. Thank you to all who were supportive. It seems like my now ex-BF just did the work for me. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.